To the Cadsdown Business Support Centre for the July Plans Committee meeting. There is no planned fire drill this morning, so should the fire alarm go off, please leave the building the way that you came in and do not use the lift. Cadsdown have installed new technology in these rooms, including microphones on the ceiling, which will make the audio quality of the recording and streaming very clear. Can I remind members, as a matter of courtesy, not to talk over one another or hold separate conversations with another during the meeting, because it is possible that these conversations will be heard on YouTube. However, on saying that, we are not on YouTube today because the recording will be uploaded later on today. This is purely because it is the first time at a plans committee that this new high-tech equipment has been used, and the plans committee have multiple elements that need to be checked throughout the process. So before we start, I'd just like to ask committee members to introduce themselves by stating the name and the ward they represent, and likewise can officers do the same. So if I start on my left.
Good morning all, my name is Phil Pennington, I'm Monkley and Putford. I have 12 parishes, starts at Abbottsham and goes to East and West Putford, which is a mile of Broadway, so it's a big parish. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Jane Whittaker and I represent Northam and Orchard Hill, and it's a much smaller ward.
Mine's bigger than this. My ward, my ward is Heartland. I've got 7 different parishes and includes Lundy Island. Basically, my name's Steve Harding and I'm standing in for Doug Smith today.
Morning, my name's Kit Heppel. I'm a ward member for Milton and Tamarside.
Morning, my name's Peter Hames. I'm a member for Appledore.
Good morning, my name's Kerry O'Rourke and I'm a member for Appledore as well.
Morning, I'm Doug Bushby. I represent Bideford North, which includes the town centre.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Chris Leather, and I represent Northam and Orchard Hill ward.
Good morning, Rosemary Lark, and I represent 2 Rivers and 3 Moors.
Good morning, I'm Helen Smith, I'm the planning manager.
Good morning, Laura Davis, development management team leader.
Good morning, Beth Hobbs, apprentice planning officer.
Morning, Stacey Dory, head of legal and governance.
Good morning, I'm Shelby, I'm democratic services officer.
Hi, I'm Lauren, I'm also democratic services officer.
Right, moving on to the agenda, item number 1, apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Smith, with Councillor Harding present in substitution.
Thank you. Item number 2, to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of June 25.
One of those, Chair.
There are no minutes. Sorry.
Oh,
So
right.
it's going to be considered a September.
Oh, September, right. Sorry, my fault. We in September meeting, so yeah. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Members with interest should declare I'll start again. Declarations of interest. Members with interest to declare should refer to the agenda item and describe the nature of their interest when the item is being considered. Elected members of DCC and town and parish councils who have considered a planning application by virtue of their membership of that council hold a personal interest and are deemed to have considered the application separately, and the expressed views of that council do not bind the member concerned. They consider the application afresh, which may include further information. Item number 4, agreement of agendas between 1 and 2. We have no part 2. Number 5, urgent matters. I have none. Stacey Ireland. No. Item number 6, public participation. The order of speaking is a member of the town or parish council, 2 members of the public against, and 2 members of the public in support. All of the above have 3 minutes each. And finally, the ward member may speak, and they are not limited to 3 members. So item number 7, we go on to the planning applications. Application 81/0041, renovation of existing garages to form carport garage for machinery, Victoria Park Nurseries, Park Lane, Bideford. It's on pages 5 to 12 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No, the officer will now give the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the application is for the renovation of some existing garages within the grounds maintenance team's compound in Victoria Park. There was a question raised at the site visits in relation to the potential relocation of the grounds maintenance team out of Victoria Park and up onto the Operational Services Centre. So the verbal update on the screen there has just been confirmed by the estates team, the fact there is no intention to move them and that they are retaining their site in Victoria Park, hence the application that's before you today. So moving on to the plans, the application site is in the centre of the park. So we've got the playing fields in the north, and we have the remainder of the park to the south. There is an existing access from Park Lane, and nearest dwellings are on Park Lane, which you can see on the southwestern side of the picture there. So we've got the site location plan. There's an existing access from Park Lane, as I say, wraps around the Bowls Club we're quite familiar with, and into the compound where the gates and the existing garages are. So the comparison of the existing and proposed site plans, there's a line of garages as existing, as you can see, against the northern boundary of the sites. The proposal is to renovate 3 of those bays to form 2 larger bays for larger machinery. We have the existing elevations, very uniform block of existing garages. And then the proposal to remove the 3 on the end and renovate them to form 2 larger bays, as you can see, to accommodate tractors and the like. A mono-pitched roof line. So again, just to show the existing floor plan as 3 bays, and then the proposal as the 2 larger bays. There we go, to show the accommodation of the equipment. And then just some photographs which members would have seen already at the site visit. So the one on the left-hand side shows the view that you get sort of walking past the site, the Bowls Club behind you. You get a glimpsed view of the garages behind the greenhouses that are on the site. The photograph on the right showing the access arrangements. It's quite a wide path at that point and it is used for maintenance vehicles. And then the photograph on the left-hand side there shows the existing garages. So it'll be the 3 bays closest in the foreground there that will be removed and replaced with 2 larger garages. And then the view on the right-hand side is across the playing fields to the north. So it shows a little bit of the context. You will get a view of the garages with the increased height from that angle. So just to run quickly through the material planning considerations that are set out in the officer's report. In the principle of development, the application site is in the settlement boundary for Bideford, would support an existing employment use and is considered to comply with policies ST06, ST11 and DN12. In terms of the character, the application site is reasonably well screened from the south, glimpsed view as you can see from the photographs. There will be views from the north, but these will be within the context of surrounding buildings as existing. In terms of residential amenities, the application site is located at some distance to residential properties in Park Lane. The nature of the use won't alter. Environmental Protection Officer has recommended a construction working hours condition, and that's been included in the officer's report. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, it's an existing hard surface site, so there's no impact on protected species or their habitats, and likewise would be considered de minimis from a biodiversity net gain point of view. The access arrangements will be unchanged as a result of the proposals. And in terms of drainage, no additional surface water runoff is considered to result because of the hard surface nature of the site. The recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I have no registered of public speakers, so I'll throw the matter open for discussion. Yes, Councillor Bushby.
I'm happy to recommend approval as a ward member.
I'll second.
I think Councillor Whittaker's hand was up first.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to second that.
Any further? Yes, Councillor Hames.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's the usual one I try and put in. I gather there's no electricity there, so there's no scope for solar, presumably, on the roofs. But can we put in something about desirability of water capture? Possibly a large tank which could be rainwater runoff, which could possibly be used for cleaning vehicles or whatever.
As we can certainly put that as an informative, Councillor Hames. There's not a policy basis for requiring that via condition, but as committee are happy, as we've done on other applications, we could include an informative.
Is the proposer and seconder agreeable to that?
I'm quite happy with that, but I could just add, it's my understanding that the large greenhouses, which are basically part of this same site, do have tanks there that the rainwater from those roofs do go into a large tank there, which they use for a variety of purposes.
I'm quite happy as well. I think it's quite sensible in actual fact to always do that if you can.
Right, so it has been proposed by Councillor Bushby, seconded by Councillor Whitaker, that the application is approved, subject to the adding of that informative. All those in favour?
Monsieur
Recorded vote?
Yeah.
Councillor Bushby,
For
Councillor Haynes,
Or
Councillor Heppel,
4.
Councillor Leather,
For,
Councillor Locke,
For.
Councillor Whitaker,
For.
Councillor O'Rourke, Councillor Pennington,
4.
Councillor Harding.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to application number 9, 1/108724, reserve matter application pertaining to layout, scale, appearance, internal access and landscaping for construction of 195 dwellings pursuant to 1015/2014 land north of Clovelly Road, Abbotsham. It's on pages 13 to 50 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? The officer will now get a presentation. Let's put down.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you, Chair. Reserve matters application 1087/2024 REM is proposed for the construction.
Can you hear at the back? Yes, right, Magic, thank you.
183 dwellings, pursuant to the outline permission, land of north of Clovelly Road. Just for clarification on the agenda, reference is made in the description to 195 dwellings. That was the original description. We've subsequently had revised plans which reduced the number down to 183. Just a verbal update to begin with. Since the committee report was written, we've received revised plans. As I mentioned, that was to reduce the numbers from 195 down to 183. That was due to concerns about 12 affordable units that were shown on the east side of the development, to the south of the playing pitches and adjacent to the school. And officers raised concerns that could compromise the bringing forward of the playing pitches and the school. So following discussions with the applicant, those 12 units have now been removed. So in terms of that verbal update, the conditions that are addressed in the agenda are now slightly out of date. They refer to old plans. So if members were minded to support the recommendation, officers would ask for delegated authority to amend those conditions, so that they accord with the revised plans.
Yeah, just to clarify, the majority of the plans are correct. In particular, there's a very small number that have been included, which it's not felt unnecessarily needed to be approved plans, such as street scenes, phasing plan, and particularly the condition around drainage. There are drainage plans that are listed in the plan schedule that would most helpfully be pulled across into the drainage condition as well. So everything you will see and everything that's on the website that you would have looked at and the plans listed are correct.
Yeah.
There's just some very minor changes that we officers would seek delegation to correct.
The officer report also makes reference to carbon reduction plan condition, which haven't pulled through onto the agenda. So we'd also like to add that as a condition. So here's the site, the red line site. We're on the west far side of Bideford. The site is located to the north of Valley Road Industrial Estate, to the south of Abbotsham Road. Its northwest boundary is the A39, and its east boundary is Morton House and its parkland, as well as the Red Rose site, which has been built. Just for context, this is the outline master plan. The uses of the land remain pretty much the same as shown on this plan. The outline forms part of bid 01. It's not the whole of the allocation, it's 750 dwellings worth. The outline secured a new link road between the A39 and Abbotsham Road. It also secured a school site, playing pitches, community hub and local centre, which are all to be accessed off the new link road, including this 2B site. It's the phasing plan. Phase 1 is on the eastern side, adjacent to the Red Rose site. This site came in front of committee last May. You may have seen that part of the site has been built. Phase 2 was the link road that was also approved last year, and we're now on to phase 2B. So this is the site layout with the master plan. You'll see the pink area that's now sort of shaded out. That's the area for all the community hub, the local centre, playing pitches, which are still under discussion. This is just zoomed in a little, just to show you the really excellent footpath and cycle links that are throughout the whole of the outline site. There's an orange dashed line that runs from phase 1 on the right hand side and that flows through into phase 2B. That's a 3 metre wide cycle path that also links up to Abbotsham Road. And then there's yellow dashed lines which show further footpaths linking through the future phases and also through the Bowood plantation as well. This is the site layout. I've just indicated in blue the 3 metre wide to be adopted shared footpath, cycle path that will run along the eastern side of the site. In green, I've shown another informal shared cycle footpath that will run along the eastern side. The premise of the layout is very much landscape-led, ecology-led. We've got the Bowood plantation on the west side. All the boundaries are characterised by native hedgerows and native and mature trees. There's another block of woodland in the northern part of the site. So in terms of the layout, everything has had to be pushed in from the boundary. So there's a minimum 10 metre buffer around the whole of the site. And in terms of design, that is certainly the best way to deal with the site and to minimise any harm to existing trees or to bats. There's quite a large amount of informal landscaping, as I said, that surrounds the site. There are 2 formal play spaces. On the right-hand side, there's a local area of play, which is for younger children. And towards the bottom left, adjacent to the woodland walk, is the village green, as it's called, which is an area of sort of recreational space, which includes a locally equipped area of play, another formal play space. Similar to phase 1, around the site, there's also what's called play on the way. So that's informal play, which is things like the stone play towers to climb, and there's play logs, and there's various bits of art and equipment. This is the affordable housing layout. I'm afraid it's difficult to see. I I can barely see it, but there are red and blue dots. The red dots denote the social rent, affordable housing, 30 of those, and in blue, that's the shared ownership. There's 22 of those, and they're not clustered in one area, they are separated out throughout the scheme. As I said previously, there were an additional 12 units that were proposed to the east of the site, which have now been removed. But having said that, they would have provided far in excess, what would have been required by the Section 106. On this site, we end up being 3 affordable housing short of the 30% requirement, but officers feel that there is ample space in future phases, potentially on land to the south of the local centre, which will be able to bring forward a policy and Section 106 compliant affordable housing layout. This is for context in terms of the approved link road from the A39 to Abersham Road. You can see to the north of the link road there will be 3 large attenuation ponds, and they will take most of the surface water from phase 2B as well as the other phases, and also from the link road. This is the surface drainage within the site. We've got adoptable surface water pipe work, as well as filter strips and swales. The green denotes the filter strips that cleans the water before it goes into the attenuation ponds, and we've also got swales along the western side of the layout. Some street view sections. The architecture and materials carries on from phase 1. In terms of materials, we've got the buff brick primarily with red brick banding, with lesser use of red brick with some yellow banding. There's also white rough cast render. We have chimneys in specific places throughout the site in key locations. There are also nodes as you come through the sites where the materials will change, just so there's a bit more interest as you travel through the site. Just boundary treatments. The whole premise is that closed bordered fencing can't be seen from public views, so that only relates to, that's the blue, and that all relates to rear gardens. Everything that you can see from the street or from the public open space includes estate fencing around those public areas, and private drives, which will also have native hedging. In key places, we've got low brick walls, and also to define private plots, there will be brick 2 metre or 1.8 metre high brick walls. Landscaping plans. There are significant tree, hedge and shrub planting throughout the site. The whole of the outline site historically forms part of a historic parkland, so the trees that are to be used in the main are they're parkland trees. So we've got oak, lime. We have an avenue of trees on the east side of called the Spine Road. And just to note, the Spine Road that runs through the site, that was secured as a sustainable transport link. So that's wide enough that you can get a bus through, in effect. So there's future hopes that there'll be a bus link that will link Valley Road up to Abersham Road. As you come into the site from the link road, the first 6 houses that you'll see will be defined by a stone hedge bank. just a flavour of the house types. See the brick banding. We've got sort of brick coins as well as banding around some of the windows. These are the affordable units, which are very similar design to the market dwellings. This 2 photos from Abbotsham Road. The top left, that's the existing Higher Winsford Farm access track, beyond which that will be where the link road comes onto Abbotsham Road. On the right hand side, that photo is just looking back towards the Higher Winsford access. This doesn't quite show the site, but I'll put it in for context just so you can see the wider site. This is to the north, this is Badgers Wood site. On the left, you can just make out phase 1, which is quite well concealed with all the blocks of woodland. In the middle, you can just make out a white building. That's Little Morton. That's a pair of semi-detached. The field that it's adjacent to is where the playing pitches and the school would go. Our site is further to the right. So I've just put this on. The arrow is just going to show, it's just giving you the direction of where the next photos are taken. Apologies for the gate, it's a bit skew with, but hopefully you get the idea. We're looking back towards the northwest. On the right hand side, just showing where the pictures would be. The land on the right hand side, the local centre land that's currently being marketed, and that's for Class E uses as well as community uses. So that could be for shops or dentists, anything like that. You can see where the link road would come through. This piece of land is where the first smaller bit of residential land would be. And on the left-hand side, you can see where there's an existing barn, beyond which is where it's the access to the larger main field. So this is me turning around, and this is Higher Winsford Farm, and it's traditional farm buildings, which would be retained. And then a bit further on, we've got this quite impressive walled garden. The path that you can see that would be retained and would be part of the footpath cycle network through the site. The local area of play would just be in front of the walled garden in the distance, and the access would be beyond that modern tin barn. This is looking southwards towards the nearest residential property, which is Keeper's Cottage, which is quite well screened between this phase and phase 4, sorry. On the right hand side, there's Bowood Plantation. This is looking west across the plantation, where there would be a woodland walk through to a large bit of field that slopes down to the A39, which you can actually see. And that would be for ecological purposes, but there would be public access to walk through the woods and round past the side of the field. This is just to the right hand side, looking back across that's the Big Sheep, I think, and the A39. So this would be the most visible, and it currently is the most visible because the hedgerow has been removed from the A39. It's from the middle of the field, looking back across to the walled garden and to Keeper's Cottage. Along that boundary, there is actually a watercourse. It's a very small area of flood zones 2 and 3, but the watercourse is very small, and in part it's culverted. This is from the south looking north. This site can be seen in distant views from Northam, but it's relatively flat. So with the woodland, surrounding woodland, it won't be prominent. So in terms of the principle of development, this is reserved matters. The outline agreed the principle of development. It formed part of an allocated site. Affordable housing, it's not quite compliant, this parcel, but as I've mentioned, there's plenty of space in future phases. We've only got a shortfall of 3, so officers aren't concerned about affordable housing. Housing mix is as is required by section 106. In terms of character, landscape, layout and scale, officers consider this is a good quality, well-designed scheme. It carries on the theme that was developed as part of phase 1. The applicant went through a pre-application process where we looked at what's called design coding to try and look at good examples locally in terms of architectures and layouts and boundary treatments, materials, to try and make the scheme locally distinctive. So officers are happy that the scheme is acceptable in terms of character and appearance. Impact on residential amenities. There are only 3 residential properties in near vicinity to the site, but they are significant distance. The nearest is Keeper's Cottage, but it's a minimum of 25 metres, and it's also separated by landscape buffer and hedgerows. In terms of heritage assets, the nearest are over 200 metres to the east. That's Morton House and also Morton Lodge. They're again separated by large blocks of woodland and mature trees. There's no intervisibility. The officers aren't concerned about impacts on designated heritage assets. Access and parking. Highway officer Devon County has no objections. Initially raised concerns about the number of accesses that crossed the 3 metre wide cycleway, shared cycleway path. That was subsequently moved to the east side of the, so that's off-road. So that resolved those concerns. Also, the number of access points were reduced. So all in all, happy with access and parking. In terms of parking, every property's got at least 2 parking spaces. A lot of them have also got garages. So happy in terms of parking provision. Drainage, that essentially was resolved by the Link Road application and all the attenuation ponds, but it's also subject to the outline conditions. Devon County lead local flood risk. They're happy, no objections. The actual final detail will come through that outline condition. In terms of the principle and the level of detail we've currently got, they're happy with that. Ecology, we've had updated ecology reports. It's shown that we do have bats, light-averse bats. We've got a number of, we don't have any otters, which we thought we might have. We've got quite a few breeding birds. We've got habitat that is likely to have dormice. But in terms of the way that the scheme's been designed, it has away from the boundaries. There are buffers along those boundaries, a minimum of 10 metres, to make sure that impacts are limited on ecology and especially bats. There's also recommended condition on lighting to ensure there wouldn't be a detrimental impact on bats. Natural England got no objections, subject to the LEMP, so that the Landscape Ecology Management Plan and the Construction Environment Management Plan are subject to condition, which they are, so happy with ecology. There's huge amounts of public open space, large amounts of informal space surrounding the site. Also got policy compliant formal play space and the play on the way, as I've said, so we're happy in terms of the quantum of open space. So in terms of carbon reduction, a plan's been submitted that shows that the scheme would go over and above what's required by the latest building regs. As I mentioned at the start of my presentation, that would also be subject to condition. So recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James, for that comprehensive report. I've got one registered speaker, Mr. Jeff Richards. If you'd like to come to this table, and you have 3 minutes. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'm Jeff Richards. I'm a Senior Planning Director at Turley, and I've been supporting my client, Bloor Homes, the applicant of the Winsford Park development, for the past 4 years. The application before you today is the second residential phase of Bloor Homes' Winsford Park development, and we are pleased to note the officer recommendation for approval. The first phase for 82 homes was granted permission in April of last year. Permission was also granted in November last year for the link road between Abbotsham Road and the A39. These permissions followed the granting of outline permission in 2023, and before that, the allocation of the site in the joint local plan. As such, the Winsford Park development is a key part of the council's overall housing strategy and its future housing land supply. If you had a chance to see the progression of the first phase, you'll see that it's of a very high quality design. Phase 2 will continue that quality. We have held extensive period of pre-application discussions with officers, and we've been involved in subsequent positive dialogue with your officers as well. This has culminated in a final scheme proposal now before members. Phase 2 provides for a further 183 homes, a village green, areas of play, and substantial wildlife areas and corridors, including retained and enhanced woodland. Phase 2 also provides the future access to land for the local centre, sports pitches, and a new primary school. The provision of land and financial contributions to enable the delivery of these important community facilities is triggered by the development of homes in this Phase 2 application. The best location for these facilities has been carefully considered with your officers. We've also worked collaboratively with officers to agree a high quality design, including homes that are locally distinctive in respect to design and use of materials, a layout with generous areas of open space and play for wildlife, substantial landscaping, including distinctive Devonstone hedge banks, sustainable drainage, including swales, attractive cycling and walking routes through the development and linking through to Phase 1. In terms of drainage, a strategy for the whole site was agreed as part of the outline permission. The agreed components for that strategy are now being delivered as part of the reserved matters. The necessary drainage attenuation for Phase 2 was permitted as part of the link road permission, large areas for drainage, landscape and wildlife being delivered to the north of the link road. This Phase 2 application also incorporates further sustainable urban drainage, including swales through areas of public open space and infiltration strips. The overall drainage strategy accounts for future climate change and so provides significant betterment compared to existing greenfield runoff from the site. In respect to biodiversity, through on-site improvements and off-site financial contributions to the Devon biosphere, a 10% net gain in biodiversity will be achieved. This application will include substantial areas of open space, landscaping, woodland, and wildflower meadow to support biodiversity. A landscape and ecology management plan has been submitted alongside the application.
Can I ask you to wind up, please?
Detailing proposals for future enhancement and management of the site. Overall, we're creating a new community with on-site facilities, attractive pedestrian and cycle links, links to nature, and opportunity for sports and play. Bloor Homes are excited to have the opportunity to continue to create a new community that we can all be proud of. We hope that members will support the recommendation for approval. Thank you very much.
There's no further registered speakers, so I'll now throw the matter open for discussion. Yes, Councillor Bushbury.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the officer. It is a high quality development and it's great to see the care that's been taken in tree planting, the screenings and things like that. It does look like a quality development. I think far better than some of the ones that have come before us in the last few years. Can I just pick up on a few points? Right at the start, the officer mentioned that there were 13 properties that were deleted from this plan. But let's just be clear, these aren't 13 properties that are going to be lost. It's 13 properties deleted from this part of the plan that will be added somewhere else, presumably.
Yep.
Okay,
that's
the
right.
first point. And this is something that does concern me. You've on your presentation, you highlighted the play spaces that are available on the site. Now, that's a brilliant idea and I love to see this, but we've had play spaces on developments in and around the town, going back, many, many years, which are fantastic when they actually get built and are come into use. Problem arises a decade or so later when all the equipment is all worn out and it needs replacing. The maintenance of those play areas in the interim period and the future ownership. So can I have some clarity on what has been put in place to ensure that, burden doesn't fall either on Torres District Council or the Town Council, as has happened in the past with other developments?
So there's, within the section 106, there's a management company and an open space scheme that has to be submitted to the council, and that has to be maintained in accordance with the approved play space, and that has to be maintained ongoing with that.
Ongoing, but for how long? Is it ongoing and continually ongoing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the management company can't be wound up. Those so that has to be ongoing, and the maintenance has to be ongoing.
So for that to happen, presumably the resident of said properties will be paying a fee into a management company to actually fund any future maintenance.
That's right.
Fine, that's just the first part. The wooded areas, fantastic to see that they are being retained, because unlike some of the sites that we've had in the past where we built on farmland that wasn't particularly good, this clearly from the slides, it is excellent farmland. I'm sure Councillor Locke would probably agree with that. When you see the rich pasture land, it's a shame that it's lost. Having said that, I realise that, can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, etc. But what's going to happen with the ownership and the future maintenance of the woodland areas?
Again, and that forms part of the management company. So I made reference to a LEM, so a landscape ecology management plan, and that goes through at least 30 years into the future about how those areas are managed. It doesn't finish at 30, they get to a point and then they have to look at, because obviously in 30 years things will change in terms of what they need to do in terms of management and maintenance of those bits of woodland. But yeah, so that is all in hand. The management of those areas does form part of the management company.
The reason I asked particularly about the wooded areas, those existing woodlands probably haven't had any footfall through them, for decades, because it's on private land. When you surround it by properties, you're going to get a lot of people using the woodland, walking through, kids are like they're going to go in and explore the woods. So it is important that woodland, when we know that it's going to be used by the public, are safe. Now, the Town Council own Ford Woods, just on the outskirts of town on the Torrington Road. And I know for a fact that Town Council spend a significant sum of money on a wood which is quite a bit smaller than that. So I'm glad that, efforts will be made to make sure that the woodland is inspected and safe. So it will be inspected by a qualified tree surgeon, probably on an annual basis, to make sure that it remains to be safe. Okay. All right, my third point, and this is one that I don't know whether other councillors receive complaints, but the first or the current phase that Bloor Homes are developing, I think it's Bloor Homes, along the Amersham Road, involved a road closure, and the complaints came in thick and fast. Facebook lit up. There was complaints about the closure of Amersham Road, in particular the length of the closure, and it really did affect big time, the traffic flow in and around the town, with everything being diverted either along Amersham Road past Bideford College or up through Morton Park Road. Are there going to be any further road closures of that type, or indeed that length, this development or future ones?
Well, that's something that we wouldn't get involved with as planning officers. What I can say in terms of my understanding part of the issue with phase one was to do with surface water. Now, there's no need to close Abbotsham Road to do that because everything will be done on the phase two link road. So it's in that field next to the A39. So there won't be any closures because of that. I am aware. I have had long discussions with my county colleagues.
You've had long discussions?
Yes, with my colleagues at the county council highways in terms of the road closure and the number of complaints they had. So I am aware of, as a point of principle, they do not want to close the road. They do not want an extensive. So in terms of when the new link road comes through to Abbotsham Road, there will have to be a closure, but I don't believe that will be a total closure. But there will have to be some form of closure. It may be with traffic lights for that part. In terms of all the services that need to come down Abbotsham Road, the idea is to bring them across the playing pitches and school land rather than down Abbotsham Road. So I can't give any. I personally couldn't. As officers, we couldn't give any commitment because we're not involved. But certainly the idea is not to close that road.
Well, I'm glad of that, but it would have been nice if the speaker representing the developers could have touched on some of that detail, because it is a big effect on the people living in and around Abbotsham Road. And as you say, there was numerous complaints. I would have liked some kind of assurance that the local residents who are already live in and around this area aren't going to be inconvenienced once again by significant road closures. And I know we don't want it, but you can't give me any reassurance.
I am sure the speaker will take on board your concerns and pass it on to them.
I certainly. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker, you're next.
Well, thank you, Chair. I agree with the councillor, my colleague over there, that actually it looks like a really good site, and it looks like a very well designed site. And I'm sure it will move on beautifully in many respects. But it's quite a long way out of the town. And you said in an early part of the talk that the community hubs and so on was still under discussion. Made me feel a bit nervous, because one of the things I think is really important about a big site like this is you do have to have services there for everybody. A lot of people are going to live there, and they won't be in the centre of Bideford, probably just as well, but they will need things that are important, like community hubs, and we haven't got a lot of those when you think about the developments across the whole area. So I want a bit of reassurance from you, if it's possible, James, to expand on that conversation a bit.
Sure. No, I can reassure you that they will be delivered as part of the Section 106. The discussions that have been going on is making sure that how they are delivered works. So, for example, if we go back, so we've been working very closely with County Council Education Department and also with Bideford AFC to ensure that this piece of land can be developed and work for everyone in terms of the school site needs to be a certain size, but not only that, it needs to have a layout and be located in the best location for school users and residents. One of the issues that we've had in terms of the playing pitches is that the land slopes. There's about 7 metre difference, and along the eastern boundary there's a back corridor, there's an avenue of very mature beech trees, and as initially shown, the pictures were shown on that side of the field. Now unfortunately you wouldn't be able to, for example, have any floodlighting, which the football club would require because of that back corridor. So then we looked at, well, actually we should think about moving it to the other side and swapping the sides. And then how does it work as a piece of design? Where does the community hub go? Is this the focus of the development? So the community hub will be delivered on which piece of land? So they're the discussions, because if we say, okay, the school can go in this a certain part of the site, then that has a knock-on effect with everything else. And because of the slope, the way that you lay the pitches, the playing pitches will be in a certain way, and it takes up more land because you're obviously having to put like retaining structures in, or you're having to deal with the levels in a certain way. Now, the 12 affordable units that have now been removed, they were in the sort of in the middle southern part of that pink area, and we went through many iterations of design about how you could get pitches on there. You know, we were like moving bits of lines around the plans, and everything we looked at suggested that those units were stopping us doing what we need to make it work. If we agree something and then the football club say, well, it doesn't work for us because we can only get 1.5 pitches in, or we can't get floodlighting in, or the community hub, which we also would like to double up as the changing rooms. If that's in the wrong location, then it just doesn't work. So that's where we are. So the idea is, from discussing with the applicant, is that the next phase or 2 phases will be this area, because, for example, the playing pitch, the service land for the playing pitches has to be provided by 150 houses. Now we'll get to 150 when we get into the larger field. So it all works. It logically works. It sort of comes down from the north. Comes down. So yeah, be assured that those community benefits will be delivered as much as they can be, because the local centre can't. That is marketed. We can't say that there will be a local. So the local centre is like potentially it's an area of land for the shops, and also potentially for like dentists, things like that. So that's marketed. Doesn't necessarily mean that bit will come forward, but the community hub definitely will. The pitches will, and the school, if Devon County want it, will come forward.
Thank you, James. I'm reassured now. When you said a building, something associated with the community hub where people do changing rooms and so on, will they be actually built and delivered by the developer?
There's a contribution.
It's just a contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we have to somehow manage the fact that they're going to be built.
Yeah.
This always bothers me a bit. I'm sorry to say, but it really does always bother me, because it all sounds lovely. It's a bit like this marketing area where you're going to have dentists and this and that and that. It's in the concept is great, but the deliverable, the reality of it very often doesn't happen.
In terms of the community hub and the playing pitches, the contribution is substantial.
Right.
So we've been in discussions with Adrian, our projects officer, and as a council, we'll be able to drive that forward, so that there is ample money there to deliver it.
Right.
So that's different to the local centre where it is more notional.
I'm always optimistic. I like to think that it's all going to happen, and it really is very important when you're a fair way out of the town and you're going to have a lot of new residents living there. You know, you don't want it to be barren. That sounds a funny description, but you know what I mean. You need to have the services. You need to bring the services in order to make it a really successful area where people want to live, and presumably where they want to sell their houses. So that's really important as well, isn't it? Thank you, James.
Councillor Apple.
Thank you, Chair. You know, it's quite apparent to me from our officer's presentation that there's been quite a large degree of consultation and cooperation with the applicants. I've looked at the reasons for calling. They all seem to be addressed. So I can't see a problem. So if Councillor Bushby has recommended for approval, I second it.
I don't think you did recommend approval, Councillor Bushby. No.
I'm happy to move that we recommend approval.
Subject to the conditions.
Yeah.
According with the revised plans. Yeah. You happy with that? Yeah.
And the carbon reduction.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor James.
Yeah, just a few points I wanted to raise. The call in, I was a bit surprised that wasn't expanded on by the councillor who called it in, either by written statement or being here, but no circumstances, perhaps it wasn't possible for her. The other points, particularly on wildlife, yeah, I'm particularly concerned about the siting of this development. The rest of the phasing is away from the link road, whereas this one sort of mainly abuts the link road. There doesn't seem to be any provision or much provision for wildlife in terms of a wildlife corridor. There used to be deer on the site, whether they still are, I don't know. But in terms of other mammals, birds, etc., there's a block there which sort of seems to be against policy ST14 and the National Planning Framework policy as well, in terms of maintaining ecological networks. Having visited a brilliant site at Godsborough, just further into Bideford recently, which is a Devon bird site. There's 30 acres there where they've worked so hard to make a site for wildlife. But in terms of access and the wildlife corridor, I wonder what this development's going to do, really. Also, in terms, I'd like to say that the developers or the applicants have worked hard on accommodating wildlife, but my question is whether it's enough, really. The woodland walk, I've got a query. Does that actually go into the wood, or is it on the perimeter? I mean, if it goes into the wood, there could be quite a lot of disturbance of wildlife. I noticed that the Badger Hill development, I think there were restrictions on public access. So there are my concerns about wildlife, and also to take up Councillor Bushby's point about monitoring, how effective is it going to be on the wildlife provisions? That's a huge amount of monitoring put in the plan. How good it will be, I wonder. And turning to carbon reduction, I noticed that they're still going to install gas boilers in the houses. And also there seems to be a lack of clarification about the solar provision. It's on page 38, it seems to say some of the houses will, and another sentence that says all of them will. So I query that, though I applaud the fact that they've looked at carbon reduction, but very much concerned about installing gas boilers, bearing in mind the government's sort of targets and the encouragement of heat pump provision. And the third point is about cycle provision. There's an excellent network of cycle tracks provided in the developments, but in terms of outside the development, I'm not so sure. I realised that the access was part of a previous application, but my query is there a 106 contribution towards cycle provision along the road, Abbotsham Road to Bideford, or elsewhere if that wasn't possible? And also in terms of bus services, is there a travel plan as part of the application where bus services could be encouraged? So they're my 3 points, really. I welcome some answers from the panel.
Okay, so first point in terms of like wildlife corridors, yeah, there are the whole of this phase 2B is premised around there being buffers around all of the built development. Along the east side of the woodland, the central woodland, that has a 10-metre corridor along the entire length, specifically for bats. And I can only really go back to Natural England have got no objection subject to the LEMP and the SEMP, so they're happy with the impacts on protected species. The LEMP does cover everything it needs to do in terms of this reserve matters, and it is based on what was agreed essentially at the outline. We've gone through a process of updated ecology reports specifically for phase 1 and phase 2. So officers consider that we do have enough information here to show that the species will be protected, and there will be an enhancement in terms of BNG. In terms of the corridor pathway that runs through the 2 sites, that actually exists. It's a bit overgrown at the moment, but it is a footpath. It may have originally actually been tractor possibly, but yeah, so that'll be a footpath. It's currently there. It needs to be cleared a little. That will link the 2 sides. in terms of ongoing maintenance management, I can't really say much more than I previously said in terms of we've got a management company that will maintain the site, and it will have to have due regard to the landscape ecology management plan. And so we're happy in terms of the management of that woodland area. The carbon reduction plan, my understanding is that there will be solar panels on every single dwelling. Cycle paths, spoilers. Yeah, well, that's something that we wouldn't be able to control, unfortunately. I mean, a lot of what they're proposing, I mean, it's the latest building reg standard with additional thermal efficiency. We wouldn't be able to condition that they have to. It would be nice.
You can encourage, but not condition.
Yes, I have encouraged, but we've not been able to secure that. Hopefully, the future home standard will come into effect soon. In terms of cycle paths, as you said, really good connections within the site and to the future phases. There is a contribution in the legal agreement for, I think it's Kenwith Valley. There isn't one for on road, and primarily that's I believe because Abbotsham Road is so narrow in that for most of that its length. So we weren't able to get a cycle path on road, hence why it's all off road. On the western side of the link road, I believe it is wide enough. There will be a cycle path along there going westwards, but not. It's all internal eastwards.
And in terms,
Councillor Leather,
sorry, I did ask about a travel plan as well for bus services, etc.
That would have been an outline.
That was in
yeah, there's a TA part of that.
Yeah.
The travel plan.
Councillor Leather.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I think it's a very good reserved matters application, apart from, for me, the parking of some in front of properties, and I hate that, parking in front of properties. It's frowned on now. It should be arranged better than that. Not always possible, I do appreciate that, but I don't like when you look down the road and you see old cars parked in front of properties. As far as closing, mentioned about closing roads, I sit for Torridge on the Hattock Highway and Traffic Orders Committee, and we gave the County Council highways officers stick over the full closure of Abbotsham Road when it happened, and all the controversy about that, and said you must never let an applicant close a road completely like that. There must always be at least single way working. So I think they got that message loud and clear about it. But if you look on page 38 at the list of section 106, I mean, community hub contribution of 1.3 million. Well, I think as Councillor Whittaker said, yeah, the money is going to be allocated. Who will actually provide it? You know, who's going to come forward to actually put this in place? And if it isn't put in place, the money goes back to the applicant. So we had this on Morton Park donkeys years ago. There was going to be a community facility on Big Morton Park estate when it was established. Never happened. Across the road on Abbotsham Road from that, where you've now got that great big block of sheltered housing, there's land there was made available for a community hub. Never happened. So we're right to be sceptical about these facilities actually being provided. The money might be provided, but more to that, we need to know who will provide them. And that should be part of our, in my view, part of our planning process. Yeah, the money's there, and who's going to be doing it? Won't be the applicant. So,
do you want to come back
Do you
on
want me to
that?
come back on that
Yeah.
point? So the contribution and the land would come to the council. There are discussions already happening involving our community engagement officer, Adrian Avery, involving a local football club in terms of ensuring that that space would work and it can be delivered. A meeting has taken place with Devon FA, looking at provision, other funding sources. So exactly who brings it forward, we can't say at this stage, but the council would have to play a key role in that and working with partners to ensure that it comes forward. And those early discussions are already happening in advance of those contributions and land coming forward, which is important to do.
Yeah. Also, Councillor Hames mentioned that there is a biodiversity offset contribution of nearly £120,000. But one wonders why, you know, the enhancement can't happen on a site of that size. But obviously it can't if they're paying, if he has to pay 120,000 for offset of biodiversity improvement. An aid in a site that size.
Yeah. So that this was all established to outline, Councillor Leather. The vast majority of the 10% is on site. It is a proportion, I think it's less than 3%, that is off-site, and that reflects that contribution. And that was a matter that was considered at outline. The application actually wasn't subject to mandatory net gain, so the 10% was offered as a benefit of the scheme by the applicant, and it's just been secured as a combination of on and off site, but the vast majority is on site.
I think you know, as planning manager, we've always said any enhanced biodiversity should happen either on the site or certainly close by, and money like that could end up going anywhere really, especially as I've brought this scheme in where you can set a business up making money from biodiversity offset grants. Swimming pool construction.
I've got a big red line against that. Yeah.
£40,000. I mean, what's that in Avon? Is there going to be a new swimming pool then? Because it's not on the plan.
So these are all 106 matters. These are outline matters, so they're not.
Yeah, but it matters to Helen. It matters to people. You know, we sit here on behalf of the public, and they need to know why this and if these things will be happening.
Yes. So the contribution, they're financial contributions, and they will come to the council. Certainly, the swimming pool will, as will similar contributions from other developments. It will be for the council through Active Torridge to look at how those monies would be spent and to put plans in place. I believe the trigger point for the swimming pool is sort of further down the line in terms of the development. So we as a service monitor 106 monies to ensure that we're invoicing for them when triggers are met, but we also work closely with the community engagement team and the major projects team so that we can have a sort of sensible projection for when these monies will come forward, so that projects can be put in place to then use those monies. All of the figures are derived from both our green infrastructure calculator and our built facilities calculator. So they all relate to that need that's generated from the development. So they're all still compliant, and the obligation on the applicant, the developer, is to pay those when the trigger is met. Those monies would come to the council, and it would be for the relevant council teams to forward plan and also to ensure that those are spent as they should be on the right projects.
So if that money wasn't spent on site for a swimming pool, could they be distributed to our other 3 swimming pools?
The intention is not for it to be on site. These are strategic contributions and the wording of the section 106 is for swimming, for example, would direct that it goes to strategic provision, which could be within Northern Bideford area. So it could be improvements to the existing pool, or it could be, at such a time in the future if there are plans for a further swimming pool. So there's flexibility built in, but equally it has to go to swimming provision.
Well, I'm only asking about these. I know these have been agreed in the 106 here, but I'm asking it so that when you explain it, the public who might be listening in or when they watch this tomorrow will know what this all is about. It's like the health contribution again, NHS contribution 400,000 nearly. I mean, that's been asked for by the NHS, I suppose.
Yeah.
But is it for doctors' surgeries enhancements, or is it for the hospital, or can they spend that wherever they want?
I believe that is for GP level provision. And as you say, Councillor Leather, that was requested by the NHS based on their formulas and looking at their existing capacity across the 3 surgeries that this this area because they have a degree of overlap between their catchment areas. So we have recently consented again a scheme for an extension to the Northern Surgery, and there are capacity issues there. So these monies would go towards GP provision, but it would be for the NHS to sort of implement and make sure they're spent.
Yeah, I am pleased that PV photovoltaic is going in all the properties. Strongbox has done that on their properties off Limer's Lane, and it makes sense to do it when they're being built. I mean, the cost is built into the cost of what they sell the properties for. As far as the gas boilers go, I don't think gas boilers will be gone by 2030 really. That's it. That's a separate thing, but I'm happy to support, Chair.
Is that a seconder for the proposal?
Pardon?
Is that a seconder to Councillor Apples?
So if nobody seconded it, I'll second it, yeah.
Chair, were the 106 is agreed with ward members?
Yes, they would discuss with ward members. We did have meetings with the ward members. It is a policy compliance scheme, so there wasn't a need to discuss priorities with members. So everything that was secured is in line with our policies, but ward members were involved.
Councillor Pennington.
Thank you, Chair. Very good report, and overall very impressed with the look of the site and development. And it's just one or two of the small points. Most of the questions I was going to ask have been raised. The biggest one, I think, for me is effectively my ward starts to the west of the A39 in Abbotsham, and Abbotsham effectively becomes now part of Bideford by the way the bill's going there. And I do have concerns because there is amenities in Abbotsham that I suspect many of the residents will be using on this new estate. And I want to make sure the road is safe and there is public safety for people. I'm thinking those who will walk to the pub at night, basically, and walk home at night. I'd probably be one of them, actually, but that's the way things go. Situation is road safety, highways. Can you make sure that road safety is particularly towards Abbotsham footpaths? And there's a small bridge just as you begin to go up to Abbotsham itself. Can we have a look at that to make sure that's safe for the residents around the area? Secondly, drainage. And drainage does worry me about the global development of Bideford. And I look at your numbers here. You're losing 37 acres of permeable ground to impermeable ground, or 37 hectares, which is just on nearly 100 acres, I think. If you look at the size of the fields out there, I suppose that would be the size of it. And this is only for 183 houses. The sites all around the different faces are for 750, I think, 4 times the size. And I notice you've got 1 in 100 years plus climate change. Interesting. It frightens me a bit because I've seen the work they've done down on the Kenworth Valley Viaduct down towards Morrison's. But all the water runs down from Datton Hill all the way around to all these phases. And yeah, we can cope with most of the time in gentle rain, but it does worry me immensely. And you talk about on page 39, no dwelling shall be occupied until associated permanent surface water attenuation on the site and off-site beyond the approved link road to the north has been constructed. Now, I take it that's the attenuation ponds there to the northwest I see in front, just at the junction of the Abbotsham and A39. But where is the attenuation ponds you're mentioning that are off-site? Where does that water run to? Because it's got to run back towards Bideford. And you're mentioning here that off-site, and there's nothing in your maps here that's showing where those off-site attenuation ponds are going.
So I think the off-site is just a reference to it's not this reserve matters site. Right. So those drainage attenuation ponds are on they're on parcel 2.
All right. Okay.
So that's been approved. So it's not within the red line for this site.
Okay.
So it's trying to link up this scheme with what's been already approved because although they've been separated out with different applications, they're clearly related and associated.
Okay. So where are the attenuation ponds on site then, if those attenuation ponds are the ones that are off site?
Well, there's in terms of surface water, there's swales. There are swales and there are infiltration strips. There isn't an attenuation actual pond, not.
No, it's clearly here that the associated permanent surface water attenuation on the site and off-site. So you're saying on-site. So I've picked up mistakenly, I apologise, that is the off-site attenuation. You're saying there's on-site attenuation, but there is no on-site attenuation, surely, by what's being shown here.
No, only your sort of standard suds in terms of the swale. So we could slightly amend the wording to that. But yeah, so you're completely right. On site, the drainage relates to the swales that are on the west side. And then we've got the infiltration drainage strips that then go down to the little watercourse on the east side.
Right.
Everything else is then piped northwards under the link road, the attenuation ponds.
Yeah.
So we could amend that wording just to make it clear.
Is that the drainage condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, as I sort of highlighted at the beginning, there are drainage plans within your plans list which need to be pulled across into that condition. So we would be looking to amend that to reflect both the on-site and then the relationship with the drainage ponds that you can see on the screen.
Well, I think I registered my concern about the overall risk to the area if you get really heavy rain. I think you can't believe it now. There's 70 years ago we had the Lindens flood disaster, but we do get these heavy bouts of rain increasingly with climate change, etc., etc. And lastly, you've already asked the questions very well about the amounts on the 106 payments on page 38. It's surprising the NHS contribution is only about a third of what goes to schools. And I see there's nothing for 11 years onwards. It's all primary education SEND. Why nothing for
secondary
education?
Yeah. So both the NHS and Devon County's local education authority have adopted formulas for how they come to the figures that they ask for, and that's why they're different, and it's based on capacity issues. So in Bideford, the local education authority have indicated that there is capacity at secondary sort of age provision, hence there wasn't at that point.
I think Route 39 is going to be quite convenient for a bus to stop on the road to go to Route 39. Interest from that side. And go back to the NHS contributions now. I've had this debate many a time, going back to David Green when he was in your seat, Helen. I didn't think doctor surgeries were eligible for 106 payments because they are private businesses. And it goes to NHS. My concern is now that our North Devon District Hospital is no longer a standalone institution. It's in with Plymouth and Exeter. And I wanted to, is it possible to make sure we ring fence this spending for the residents of our area? That's my concern.
So the wording of the section 106 in terms of the NHS contribution for this development refers to, I believe, surgery provision within Northern Bideford. So that's stipulated that it needs to be spent within the area. Wider provision in terms of the more acute care and sort of hospital level provision, there is still sort of a debate amongst the Devon authorities around whether such requests meet the SIL regulations. However, this is something that we're going to be actively looking at and starting to look at already with key infrastructure providers, including the NHS, through development of the new local plan, and JPPC, the thematic groups, and all members will be involved in those discussions. But we're looking certainly to get on with early engagement with infrastructure providers.
Thank you for your answer. And broadly in support, thank you for your answers, Chair. Thank you for offers.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, most of my questions have been answered. I mean, I did highlight that they are still providing 30% affordable, the mix of which is acceptable, and it will be pepper potted throughout. But then we have had confirmation, although this part is going to be short, we won't lose any affordable overall on the whole site.
No,
so that's fine.
There's still scope in future phases. I think it's only a very small percentage. Yeah, it's 3 units. That's a very small percentage.
Yeah, so they will still be provided 30% affordable, so that's fine. Yes, Councillor Harding.
Well, basically, going back onto the water problem, I mean, look at the topography of the farm. I know the farm quite well, and I know all the other farms around. It all comes down to that lovely little junction where they're going to have 2 ponds. lower side of that, you've got Lower Winsford, and I would be worried about them because, you know, if we do get these deluges of rain and that, you know, how do they stop anything happening to those properties down there? Because I remember when they put the buildings at the Granville on the old playing fields there, how the bungalows a bit lower down were flooded out. And, you know, so I mean, basically, you know, how have they managed to be able to sort themselves out so they don't, that never occurs to the poorer properties down on Lower Winsford, because they are in the pit.
Well, I know I've said this before on the phase 1 site. I mean, we're in a very different place planning is and the way we looked at drainage to, let's say, 15 years ago. And a lot, obviously, with climate change, we are seeing these deluges. Luckily, over 10 years ago, after we'd had the floods, many years of floods, the government said, okay, we need to have our own, we need to look at this. We need to do some proper mapping, not just for normal flood risks from rivers and the sea. We need to look at surface water. We need to stop this, and we need to make sure that all new development does not add to this. In fact, it's no worse, if not better. And that's when 10, 11, 12 years ago, we had Devon County as the lead local flood authority. And you were talking about the climate change plus 40%. So the schemes that are coming before you now, they're over-engineered significantly. And a lot of the issues that we are seeing is because of developments that don't do the things that this can do. So while I totally understand your concerns about Lower Winsford and about its location across the road and at lower ground, these are very large attenuation ponds, and they are over-engineered to meet latest climate change concerns. So,
thank you.
Right, well, I think we've given it a very lengthy and good discussion. Oh, sorry, Jane.
No, that's
Out the
absolutely
way,
fine.
because
Just, I obviously can't mind read, but I imagine this application was called in because of the long conversation we had about flooding on the earlier application. And I know who called it in, and I know she had a great deal to say, and so did I at the time. I think the site was running like a river.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we all could remember that in actual fact. And I've just got one question, and I don't know actually who's going to answer it. And it's all about us representing our residents actually and taking care of these considerable amounts of money. What happens when we go into local government redevelopment? And this money, is it going to be ring fenced? So it actually does stay in Torridge and does deliver. I know I can see my colleagues smiling, but actually, you know, it's a question that's worth asking, or at least it's a question that's worth raising, because at the end of the day,
whether or not you'll get a
huge amount of money that we need to see invested in our local community on that site or on sites associated with it, if that be the case.
Head want to come back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Councillor.
And can you understand why
Yeah,
I'm a bit concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. And the section 106 is the legally binding document here. And in order to be still compliant, there needs to be sufficient detail to direct where and how the monies will be spent. And against each of the obligations that are listed, there is a sort of geographical focused spend. And it would require a variation to the section 106 to change that. And the considerations under the Planning Act for any such proposal would be, does it still serve a useful purpose? And I think it's all based on evidence, so it would, I consider it not possible for it to be spent more widely.
That's reassuring, thank you.
Councillor Locke, could I just, there was a point that Councillor Pennington raised that I just wanted to come back on, which is the footway to Abbotsham.
Yeah.
So the 106 does include a £250,000 contribution towards the cost of completing the footway cycleway along Abbotsham Road from the vicinity of the A39 bridge over Abbotsham Road and the village of Abbotsham.
Okay.
So I believe that the development itself provides that footway to that point, and then the contribution would go to the county council, who would be responsible for providing that, and it's along Abbotsham Road.
I wasn't referring, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I wasn't referring to the bridge that's over the Abbotsham Road, but as you go under that bridge towards Abbotsham, you go down into a dip, And there is a small bridge
Yeah.
there that is very difficult for, particularly when trees are overhanging on a dark night. You can't see a car coming down from Abbotsham and vice versa from Biddyford. And there is quite a road risk there. And I just wonder if that could be looked at when you're looking at, because this would become quite an important highway for residents of Abbotsham.
So-
It's not the one across the A39.
No, no.
It's a little iron stone bridge just right in the depth of that valley. That is quite a pinch point.
Yeah, so the county council would be responsible for bringing any such footway forward, so they would have to consider the safety aspects of
Thank you.
that part.
Thank you for explaining.
Right, so it has been proposed by Councillor Heppel, seconded by Councillor Leather, that the application is approved subject to the conditions according with the new revised plans and the carbon reduction condition. Before we go to vote, I'd just like to thank both officers for being so proactive in responding to the questions and giving us answers. So well done. So can we go to the vote now then, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bushby,
For.
Councillor Haynes,
I'll abstain.
Councillor Heppel,
Cool.
Councillor Leather,
For.
Councillor Locke,
For.
Councillor Whitaker,
Or
Councillor O'Rourke,
for
Councillor Pennington,
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
That's 8-4 and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to application 10-1/020825. Change of use of existing offices to Class C4, House of Multiple Occupation, 11 to 12 Mill Street, Biddyford. And it's on pages 51 to 66 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, I'll now ask the officer to give the presentation.
Thanks, Councillor Locke. The application has been called in by Councillor Bushby for possible overdevelopment of this type of building use in the town centre and poor design, in particular policy DMO4. So I've had a late comment from TDC Waste and Recycling, small on the slide, but they have said there's insufficient bin storage. Probably needs double the amount.
Could you just speak up a little bit?
Could you speak up? I can't hear.
So housing renewal, I've gone back to housing renewal and told them that the bin storage is insufficient, and they've said, okay, well, this is part of the license, the HMO license that they would grant when there is sufficient recycling and waste. So it's not a planning issue as such, but it would be covered off by housing renewal. And the applicant emailed me yesterday to say, I confirm a responsible person will be managing and visiting on a daily basis and will be responsible for putting it out on the correct days. And he's willing to double the amount of space under the stairs. There is room for that. On the plans. So the site is located in Mill Street in Bideford. It's an area of dwellings and retail units. It's a primary shopping area. It's within the Bideford Conservation Area. Next slide. It's not a listed building. It's currently vacant and has been since April last year. It was Slee Blackwell who've moved down to the quay. There are two shops on the ground floor, which are sort of antique style shops, and office space at first and second floor. So the ground floor has a separate entrance to the shops. Currently, you can get into the shops either side of that ground floor. Those are going to be blocked up. That door kept for accommodation. So on the first floor, yeah, proposed. So the two shops on the ground floor to remain. The central door between the shops will allow access to a central staircase for the HMO accommodation above. And as I said, each shop has its own entrance door already. And a bin store is proposed on the ground floor adjacent to the staircase. First floor is to accommodate 2 bedrooms, shared living room and shared kitchen. And the second floor is to provide 3 bedrooms, bathrooms and utility areas. My photos show Mill Street. Those are the 2 units. First floor was offices. Second floor was offices. And that's the view from the second floor. So the main planning considerations, under principle, there's quite a lot. So I'll go through. The policy ST06 of the local plan identifies Bideford as a strategic centre that will provide a focus for housing, employment, significant level of development, consistent with the scale and complementary of advanced schools, sustainable development opportunities will be secured, increase self-containment and achieve balanced development to enable the town to meet its own needs and those of the surrounding area. I think this proposal fully meets that. It's also in the primary shopping area, which is covered by ST12. And ST12 states employment, residential, community and health services, leisure and tourist facilities, attractive spaces and a balanced nightlife will be encouraged within the town centres to achieve a mix of facilities and active town centres. DM19 is also relevant. Again, that's to prevent the loss of retail, but this proposal achieves residential within the building whilst retaining retail commercial units and therefore meets with ST12 and DM19. And then we've got the housing mix, ST17, balanced local housing market. Scale and mix of dwellings in terms of dwelling numbers, type, size and tenure through development should reflect identified local housing needs, subject to site character and context and development viability. There's obviously a lot in my report about housing mix. Housing delivery lead has been consulted. She sits in planning. She's identified that the area shows no suitable market housing options for young people on low wages, and none of the large scale developments in Bideford includes HMOs for young low wage workers. She is of the view that this is a sustainable location with all the necessary facilities, would be a positive contribution to the housing market. The housing options manager within Torridge District Council has agreed with these comments and states that there are already limited opportunities for couples and single people on a low income to secure suitable housing, both social and private rented. The NPPF supports the government's objective of significantly boosting the supply of homes. It's important that sufficient amount and variety of land can come forward and address specific housing requirements. Two of the strategic aims in the local plan are a balanced local housing market and mixed communities, in particular for vulnerable and disadvantaged groups. I think I've made my point, but loss of employment, the loss of office space has to be assessed in planning, and they have demonstrated through marketing for more than 12 months that there's no realistic prospect for employment use, and all that information was available on the planning file. The reasons were that there was no parking available, it's too small, not economically viable, and there's limited appeal for office space, especially when there's no easy access for parking. They've marketed, 2 agents have marketed and been unsuccessful, it's still vacant. The retail element is to be retained, so on balance, the planning officers think that it is a good idea. It will provide a mixed use with employment generating uses, and weight is given to retaining vitality of the town centre. So because of the lack of 5-year supply, assessed, it's necessary to apply the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So that involves weighing up the planning, the pros and cons, and granting permission unless any adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So as I put in my report, the benefit provides specialist residential accommodation to meet an identified need. It is within the settlement boundary of a strategic centre in a sustainable location. In terms of design, Pauline refers to DMO 4, whether it is overdevelopment. It's not changing. The building itself is not changing in scale. It's a reuse. There are no extensions proposed. Proposed layout complies with TDC's minimum space standards for single occupancy. As I've said before, it retains the active frontage, which is the key design principle, and natural surveillance. Key characteristics of this area is that it's a vibrant shopping area with several independent retailers and small businesses which would benefit from increased footfall. The building may otherwise be vacant or fall into disrepair. And as I've put in the design part of my report, mixed use is a key principle of good design. It aims to revitalise urban areas, residential, commercial within the same neighbourhood. It offers numerous benefits, including economic stimulation, increased convenience, and enhanced sustainability. Benefits of job creation, supporting local business, sense of community, reduced travel time, improved quality of life, reduction in car dependency, efficient use of land, low carbon options, access to green space, and affordable housing. It is in the conservation area. Conservation officer's been consulted. She doesn't have any observations because it's not listed and there's no changes to the physical elevations. She does mention bin storage, which I've covered before. So as I say, it will be registered with the council's housing department as an HMO, a large HMO. It's five people maximum. In terms of amenity, there's already overlooking. There's a number of private flats in the area. The argument that the housing renewal team have made is that it's better that this is a licensed property than an unlicensed one, so it can be managed. Traffic and parking, there's no objections from Devon Highways. Site is sustainable location. It offers no parking, but it's within walking distance of facilities. In terms of ecology, the works don't affect any wildlife habitat and it is exempt from biodiversity net gain. So in summary, it would provide a contribution of one dwelling, it's counted as one, towards the housing supply, would provide a benefit to the local economy, improve facilities and services, provide suitable housing options for people on low wages, whilst retaining the retail element in the primary shopping area. So all these elements are in accordance with sustainability in the NPPF, and it is considered that the benefits outweigh negatives. So my recommendation is to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got no registered speakers, so I now throw out the matter for debate. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, you know, I'm really sad because normally when we see an application like this to develop something on the first floor above shops, we're delighted because we've always said there aren't enough developments going above the shops in the town. And it's been a mantra I've heard many times throughout the council. But on this occasion, it's the wrong place. That's how I feel. There's a great need for this kind of accommodation, but I don't think the main shopping area of the town, personally, is the right place to put it. I see that Bideford Town Council recommend refuse, and I don't think I can support it. I'd like to, because I'm absolutely sure that there is a need for accommodation like this in Bideford. But what I would like to see is the accommodation not in the main shopping area. I just think actually it's probably a better site to have a couple of new flats. If you had a couple of flats above the shops there, I think I would be very happy to support it. But I think an HMO in the main shopping area, for many reasons, probably isn't a good idea. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hames, you're next.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that I was convinced by the...
Sorry, could you speak up?
I was just going to say I was sort of convinced by the incredibly comprehensive presentation. I thought it was quite a healthy thing to have occupation in the high street, which would help to revive the high street economically. So I was thinking it was a good idea, really.
Councillor Bushford.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm interested to listen to the officer's report on this application. I'd like to pick up on one of the points that has been made by my fellow councillors in terms of the wrong place at the wrong time. Bideford, in my opinion, has an overabundance of HMOs. We've got, to my knowledge, 7, possibly 8 within 250 metres of the proposed site. And it says on the report, the intention is to provide accommodation for vulnerable homeless individuals. And whilst on the face that's commendable, the reality is, and I'm sad to have to say this, but the reality is that we have a significant number of individuals with some varying emotional or behavioural issues living within a lot of the HMOs that we currently have, and it is causing considerable disruption and sometimes mayhem within the town centre. It's in Mill Street. It's not actually in the high street. It's right in the centre of town. Bideford, as you know, last year was put in tier 2 for hotspot policing by the Police and Crime Commissioner, which was reported on by the superintendent when he gave a presentation to the full council. Bideford is now in tier 1. It's been upgraded for the reasons that it is now considered that the actual town centre is considered a high crime area, and the latest reported figures from presumably from the Police and Crime Commissioner's office states that in the town centre, so I'm not talking the whole of Bideford, this is the town centre, there's been 84 crimes reported in 2025, 38 violent and sexual offences, 23 shoplifting, 6 other thefts, and 17 all other crimes. So obviously I can't hand on heart say that these offences are created by people living in HMOs. Obviously I can't say that, I have no evidence to support that. But there is sheltered accommodation 50 yards further down Mill Street, next to the new restaurant there, that being a Bideford North resident, I am in town several times during the week. I frequent a lot of the cafes in the town, and the amount of times over this last couple of years I've seen police coming out of various properties, one in particular, bringing out individuals that have been arrested. There's always raids in there. It is an active police area. They target that area frequently. I just want to move on, if I can, briefly. You've got the Co-op store directly, again, 50 yards up the road from this application site. That it's bordering on whether it's profitable for them to stay open. Last year, they lost £88,000 in shoplifting. £88,000. And I know that's not directly
I don't think any of these
Well,
are material planning considerations.
Well,
I take on point.
I'll come in on that.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say here, trying to highlight is the fact that in my opinion, and as I say, I can't back this up with any direct evidence other than anecdotal, but in talking to the local police, a lot of the individuals that create a lot of the issues, including thefts, live in HMOs. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Come in on that. So antisocial behaviour is ultimately influenced by the management of the HMO, behaviour of the occupant. So you can't be certain who is going to occupy this HMO or any HMO. And I just really want to emphasise that such matters are not controlled under the planning regime. They're controlled by other legislation, and your decision today needs to be made on the planning merits of the scheme. That's all I wanted to say on that. And to highlight, the designing out crime officer has raised no objections. So we have consulted with the police, and no objections are raised in that regard.
If I could just come on page 53 of the report. Second paragraph, the intention is to provide accommodation for vulnerable homeless individuals. So, I mean, that's wide open. I mean, I could easily interpret that as saying it's exactly the kind of individuals that are causing a lot of the issues that we've got within the town. And that's my take on it.
Yes, Councillor Ames.
Yeah, just to reiterate the point that the crime officer hasn't made any objections to it, and there haven't been any objections from the public, and Bideford Town Council hasn't raised the matter of desirability either.
Councillor Leather.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm going to disagree with my colleague on my right here, because there is a need for this type of accommodation. And young people, specifically aimed at young people under 35, do need somewhere to live on their own and need HMOs as the issue of any crime in Bideford is for the police to deal with. And I've said it on many occasions at many meetings. The police do not do the job the public expect them to do as far as crime reduction and control is. You can't blame people who are on their own who need affordable accommodation for all the crime that's going on in an area. You can't do that. We don't. Vulnerable people, there are people probably with mental health problems who usually do have some support, even if they're living on their own. They do have some support in the background. Some are offered support and won't take it. Some are offered medication, but not all. Some people, as we've read, are working and 40% are on income support, you know, on credit, income credit. So the only thing that concerned me was the storage of waste, and that seems to have been addressed. And if whoever's managing it is going to be in charge of making sure nothing's put outside the collection period, that's fine. And if there is enough room, and from what was on the screen at the start, they can make it bigger, that space for waste. I'm happy. I'll propose that it's approved, Chair.
Well, from my point of view, I picked out on page 53 the designing out crime officer. Thank you. Having reviewed the relevant details and liaised with the local policing team, I have no objections in principle for the proposed change of use, but he has suggested a condition. Now, should the application be approved, could we not include that police condition, please?
Yeah, the officer hasn't included it because it's quite specific and probably something that would be picked up through licensing and management arrangements. But if members wish for officers to draft something that reflects that, then we can, for agreement with Chair and Vice Chair.
Yeah.
And if members wish, we could put a condition on requiring an updated refuse scheme, just showing that larger area that they're referring to, so that can be secured. The case officer hadn't put a condition on restricting it to 5. I know she did consider whether that would be reasonable or not. That if you wanted to restrict the numbers to no more than 5, that would be open to members as well. And similarly, ensuring that the floor plans are shown, so the bedroom, the kitchen, the living area are all retained for that purpose as such. So there could be a couple extra conditions there if you wanted to secure it more robustly, that floor plan and that occupancy. And then we could also draft something around what the designing outcome officer has said as well.
I second,
Yes, councillor.
second the proposal. Chair.
Yes, councillor Leather.
It also mentions a detailed management plan, doesn't it, on the top of page 54. And I think that's a good idea. There should be a detailed management plan. That can be a condition.
I did go to housing renewal and talk to them about the mailbox and the management plan and that sort of thing. They said they've never had an HMO have a airlock mailbox before. That's quite a new thing to them. It's usually big blocks of flats that have that, but they said that will all be sorted out with the landlord and the management of the HMO.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a planning issue, but
yeah, I think it would be picked up through the licence, but if members would prefer, we could incorporate those requests within a condition.
Well, I would definitely like to see the police recommendations taken up as a condition.
Yeah.
You want to come back, councillor?
I want to recommend refusal.
Right, so it has been,
Sorry, a second.
it has been proposed by councillor Leather, and I will second it by the chair that the application is approved subject to those amendments.
Yeah, so
Condition.
there was a condition around the designing out crime officer's request. Would you like a condition that requires sort of an updated floor plan showing the confirmed larger refuse area?
Yeah.
So we could secure that. We could also secure maximum of 5 occupants, and the floor plan that could all be done in one condition as well, if you would like that. So
And what about this detailed management plan, which details arrangements for cleaning, internal and external maintenance?
yeah, we as the case officer said, we would consider that could be picked up through licensing arrangements, but if you would like a condition to that effect as well, we could also do that. So I'll leave it for you to indicate, councillor Leather, if you would like that.
Yes, councillor Rook.
Thank you. It was just really to query in one of the statements. It says.
Could you speak up, please?
Sorry, it was just a query in one of the statements. It mentions that the management may be deferred to another company or organisation. So what conditions or what control may we possibly have on the use of that building moving forward? If it gets set up now with an HMO, one particular agency may be organising that. If they sell that service on, do our conditions get sold on with that service, or what way does that work?
So any planning conditions go with the permission, go with the land, the building in effect. So any future management regime or operator would have to comply with the planning conditions. They would also need the license, if it's a licensed HMO, they would also be subject to a licensing regime as well.
Thank you. And just one more question, if I may, please, Chair. Has anybody looked on whether it would be viable to make this, return it back into a family home, whether that be flats or a full house?
So
yeah, it's been marketed as an office,
It's been marketed as offices with no car parking space, etc., and so many restrictions. I just wondered what's the viability of it not being an HMO and actually going back into the housing?
So it could become, there is permitted development to change from offices to a C3 dwelling use. So that could happen under permitted development, subject to prior approval, and there's certain criteria that would need to be looked at. You can then interchange between a C3 use, which is a more traditional dwelling, and the C4 use that's before you today. So they are interchangeable under permitted development. So a dwelling, flats, and a C4 use, which is a HMO. As members of the committee, you have to consider what's before you today. So there might be a preference for it to be a dwelling. However, that isn't being proposed at this stage, and were there interest or demand for that could actually be done by permitted development. So,
Thank you for answering. Thank you for allowing me to ask.
Councillor Hames, did you second Councillor
Yes.
Bushby's
No.
refusal?
No, I can't. I seconded councillor Levinson.
Oh, right.
She's done it anyway.
So the Councillor Bushby, have you got a seconder? Councillor Whitaker, you will have to come up with planning reasons for your refusals.
The overdevelopment is not a planning refusal.
I think we need to understand more what's meant by that. So I've already sort of raised the caution around.
And the poor design DMO4, I don't think 5 people sharing one property is fit and healthy in this day and age.
Okay. I mean, the space standards are all met. I would just sort of highlight that. I think with HMOs, the licensing regime would take care of things like sort of appearance, character, refuse, etc. So I think as officers, we would question whether that's a robust reason for refusal. Typically, where you sort of see planning inspectors who've considered similar proposals, it's sort of looking at whether the wider character of the area would be impacted. And I know this is something that Councillor Whitaker touched on. So the case officer's report highlights that it's sort of characterised by a mix of commercial and residential. It's quite an active area. Would there be a sudden predominance of HMO use that would adversely affect the wider character of the area? Is perhaps the way? Yeah, okay. And I think that would then bring in policy DMO4, which would form part of your calling, Councillor Bushby, and we could potentially incorporate policy DMO1, which is a more general amenity policy. And I would suggest paragraph 135 of the NPPF, which talks about character.
I agree.
Right, so it has been proposed by.
Can I ask a question, Chair?
Sorry.
Sorry, I've had my hand up a little while.
It's all right.
Right, can I go back to page 53?
Yeah.
Top of the page, Albacare. A letter has been sent to support the application proposed from Albacare. Go back to the previous lines, vulnerable homeless individuals. Now, we have a duty as Tarsus accounts to house those who qualify as homeless. I think we're housing about 50 families at the present moment. And we've got another application coming up in a minute as well with that regard. And yet I find on page 55, there's no mention of letters coming in from Albacare. There's no letters been received. What is Albacare and how are they supporting? I just want to be clear in my own mind, given some of the comments, that we're not hurting the centre of Bideford, because Bideford has been quite a hot potato, unfortunately, over a number of years. And I want to support this application, but I want to be sure that I am supporting the application by not causing more problems for the centre of Bideford. I'm just very uncertain just at the moment. So what is the Albacare? What can we ask them? How can we get them to make sure they are supporting? Because we have a duty to house certain groups. They don't have a duty, as I understand it, under law. It's just out of goodwill, and they could walk away, as I understand the rules. I may be wrong, but can you explain to me the role of Albacare and why there's been a letter sent on page 53, but nothing recorded on page 55?
Did it form part of the application?
They're not a consultee, so they wouldn't be in that part.
Was it in support of the applicant's proposal?
Yeah, the applicant sent a letter from charity who may be housing disadvantaged and vulnerable people in there, but it may be another one. I think there's one or two.
Yeah, and I think I think that's been highlighted by the applicant, presumably to show that need and the basis for the proposal coming forward. I think I would again emphasise that actually your C3 and C4 uses are interchangeable under permitted development rights. So dwelling or flats could change to a C4 use in this way, just to sort of highlight that as well as context for your decision taking.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Chair. For your...
Chair, just briefly on that, and on that Albert, I used to chair the Bideford Club for Disabled Learners, and on Hanson Park there's a house with five bedrooms. Each one has got a separate occupant, and it's run by a charity for people with learning disabilities who now, for quite a few years now, it's care in the community. Instead of being shut away in a home, as years ago they used to be and never saw the light of day, they are now supported in the community. And it strikes me that this is a similar proposal. And I just wondered, when it mentioned a manager, that this is what the owner of the property's got in mind, that he's been approached by this charity to provide 5 bedrooms, which will be managed by this charity. But that's up to the licensing. I mean, that come forward, if this planning is approved to make it a high mall.
They still got to get a licence.
They still got to get a licence, and that was when this charity, if they are involved, will come forward and say exactly what they're going to do, and they do manage it then. And in my mind, I got that feeling when it was mentioned that there was somebody who's going to manage it and put the waste out and rubbish and be in charge of that. So I think that'll come through with a licensed person. There's no planning reason not to let these bedrooms be separately leased out.
All right, so once again, we've given the matter a good discussion. It has been proposed by Councillor Leather, seconded by Councillor Hames, that the application is approved, subject to the additional conditions as mentioned. So can we please go to the vote to approve the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bushby.
Against.
Councillor Hames.
For.
Councillor Heppel.
For.
Councillor Leather.
For.
Councillor Locke.
For.
Councillor Whitaker.
Abstain.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Against.
Councillor Pennington.
For.
Councillor Harding.
Abstain.
That's 5 for, 2 against and 2 abstentions, Chair.
So that application has been approved and there's no need to go to the second proposal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So going on to application number 11, 1/0314, expansion of existing emergency accommodation provision of 4 modular emergency accommodation units, energy centre, smoke and shelter and associated landscaping at Sunny House, Clovelly Road, Industrial Estate, and it's on pages 67 to 79 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? No, the officer will now give the presentation then.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start with the location plan. Members will be aware of the Sully House site. It already has an established use as TDC managed temporary accommodation. The building itself comprises 8 units of accommodation, and there are a further 6 modular units within the grounds of it. Just move on to this, just an aerial image. So you can see that the site is very much within the built up area of Bideford. It's within the development boundary. It is located just to the within the northern part of the Clovelly Road industrial estate. You can see that to the sort of south, east and west, it is bound by existing commercial, industrial premises. Land to the north is undeveloped land, however, that does form part of the Bido 1 allocation and is subject to the Winsford outline application, for which you considered reserved matters for part of earlier on the agenda. The site is accessed from the sort of southeast. It's got vehicular access and a pedestrian link via a pavement. Just move on. It is partially within flood zones 2 and very marginally within flood zone 3, as highlighted at the site visit. The assessment around this is all contained in the drainage section of your agenda report. There is a sort of boundary of mature trees along the northern boundary, and the site on which the additional modular units would place is currently sort of scrubland. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see Sully House itself and the 6 existing temporary modular units. They're annotated A through to F. The new additional 4 units are highlighted sort of the northwestern part of the site. Just zoom in slightly to their G through to J. Car parking will be retained as existing. And there is also a proposal for a sort of dedicated open.
Just a presentation.
Okay, so yeah, I was just talking through the proposed site plan. So you can see annotated G through to J are the 4 additional modular units. The small buildings sort of immediately to the side are comprise the energy centre. Parking will be as existing. The open space area, you can see sort of the northeast part of the site with, I believe, their benches shown, and the relocated bin store is on the eastern side of the site as well. The sort of purple dotted sort of lines show the potential route for a future pedestrian connection into the Winsford development, which is beyond through that boundary to the north. Sorry. So in terms of the proposals, so this is the floor plan. There we go. Just showing the nature of the modular unit and the accommodation. So there would be a sort of open plan combined kitchenette, living, dining area, bathroom facilities, and then a bedroom. The elevations pretty much the same as the existing modular units on site. It's just the sort of floor plan showing the plan view of the energy centre. There would be a range of boundary treatments. Predominantly, you're looking at sort of timber fencing, close boarded fencing, modular fencing. And this is the plan and elevations for the relocated bin store. The B&G baseline is on the screen now, so you can see it's very much sort of almost divided 50-50 at the moment, with the developed land in the red and white stripes. The mixed scrub with scattered trees is the existing condition of the site where the modulars and the open space will go. The green and black line, which isn't very easy to pick up on the screen, is an ecologically valuable line of trees. And in terms of post-development, the red and white area would extend to where the new modulars would go. The trees would be retained, and there would be enhanced scrub area, which is sort of the beige colour, with the green being the new open space. I'll just finally run through the photos. So that the building here is Sully House itself, which comprises the 8 units of temporary accommodation. And then sort of panning round, so the bottom left is the eastern part of the site. The right-hand photo shows where the modular units would go. You've got the sort of Harris fencing, sort of temporary washing line there at the moment. The modular units will just be to the other side of that fence, and those trees that you can see would be retained. And this is panning around to show the existing modular units and their relationship with Sully House. And that's Sully House itself. So moving on to the planning considerations. So in terms of the principle of development, the site is within the development boundary of Bideford. The use is already established, having previously been approved by this committee, I think at the end of 2022. In terms of policy ST17, which considers specialist forms of housing accommodation, that need has previously been demonstrated with supporting comments from the housing options team. This is an extension to an existing use. However, there is still that need, and whilst the numbers waiting temporary accommodation has fallen, there is still sufficient need to justify this proposal. In terms of character and appearance, the additional units would be seen in the context of the existing ones. In terms of wider public views, they would be screened by Sully House itself and also the mature boundary treatment trees. The amenity space is considered to be an enhancement to the overall appearance of the wider site. So no objections in terms of character and appearance. Residential amenity, there's no objections from the environmental protection team. As I said, it is an existing use. There is a transient nature to occupants of the units, hence the relationship with commercial premises does not give rise for objection. There was a question made during the site visits around whether there had been any complaints from the existing commercial premises, and I can confirm for members that there have been no complaints at all from any of those neighbouring uses. Biodiversity, you saw the baseline and then the post-development plan. So the proposal does trigger statutory biodiversity net gain. The B&G would be secured via the statutory condition, but also there's a condition requiring the habitat management plan. In terms of habitat units, there would be an increase of 12.88%, so that exceeds the 10%. And in terms of hedgerow units, due to additional planting, there would be an increase of 81.4%. So B&G requirements, we're confident they can be met. However, the detail of that would come through the statutory informative. No objections on highways grounds. Finally, drainage and flood risk. So the proposal is to connect into the main sewer in terms of foul drainage, as per the existing. No objections from South West Water in that regard. In terms of surface water, South West Water have questioned whether the proposal has demonstrated that it is connecting as high up the surface water hierarchy as possible. The agent acting on behalf of the applicant has clarified that due to part of the site being within an area at risk of flooding, your more sort of sustainable methods of surface water drainage aren't appropriate in that condition. The Environment Agency have been consulted, given that part of the site is within flood zones 2 and 3, and they are raising no objections subject to ensuring appropriate finished floor levels. The sequential test, the officer's assessment of the sequential test is set out in your report, and his view is that because it is an extension to an existing use, that the sequential test is met. You wouldn't necessarily put these 4 units somewhere else because they're intrinsically linked to the existing operation and the management of that. And on the basis that the EA is not objecting and is satisfied that the floor levels proposed would protect future occupants from potential flood risk hazards, there's no objection there, and the exception test is met. So with all of that in mind, the recommendation is one of approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's no registered speakers, so I'll throw the matter open for discussion. Councillor Bushby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I recommend we grant this, approve this, particularly as I am a big supporter of emergency accommodation on this particular site. It's a site that is in the right location. It's on the outskirts of town. It's amongst all the other accommodation that we've already provided. It's not in the town centre, so we'll get my full support.
Councillor Ames, you were next.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's obviously a great idea that we're developing this facility. There's just a couple of points about the amenity space. I think we were told there's some benches there. Is there scope, I wonder, for sort of small amount of play equipment? I realise it's a transitory arrangement, but it's even, they've got some nice accommodation there, but it's a bit bleak in terms of perhaps what any children will be able to do if they're there. I don't know whether it's a suitable thing under planning to do that, or whether we can do it as another proposal under another guise at the council. And the other thing is whether there's possibility of solar again. Presumably Torridge is paying for the electricity generation, I suppose. So if we could facilitate that and reduce our energy bills, I don't know whether it could go on the energy centre or on the actual units. But,
yeah, if I could come back on those points, Chair. So in terms of the play equipment, Councillor Haynes, so the proposal before you today is just the 4 fairly modest temporary accommodation units. I would say they in themselves wouldn't trigger a need for play equipment. I think the open space area is a benefit for the wider site and those existing uses, but I don't feel that we could reasonably require play equipment. But of course, that is a council-run site. That's maybe a separate discussion for another committee or working group. And similarly with the solar, I would have thought that would come up through that. We don't have a policy basis for requiring that.
I'd like to see that at another.
Well, from my point of view, I think the most important part of this report, EDC has 4 hostels providing 24 units and also the existing 6 modular units at Surrey House. And they state the hostels and modulars are always fully occupied. And I think that is the most important statement related to this application. So I will second Councillor Bushby's approval. Any further comments want to be made by Council?
I was going to second, Chair, but obviously I didn't get a chance to. Thank you.
I'll turn my head the other way. Well, sit over that side next time. So no further comments. So it has been proposed by Councillor Bushby, seconded by myself, that the application is approved.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bushby.
4.
Councillor Haynes.
4.
Councillor Heppel.
4.
Councillor Leather.
4.
Councillor Locke.
4.
Councillor Whitaker. 4. Councillor O'Rourke.
4.
Councillor Pennington.
4.
Councillor Harding.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Number 12. Application 1/044/825, erective 1 dwelling self-build, grid reference 243695123232 Littleham. Is on pages 80 to 94 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, I now ask the officer to give the presentation then, please.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's fine. So the reason for the call-in by Ken James is that the site is in a suitable location, offers a site of an approximate equal distance between the workplace of the applicant, North Devon Hospital, and Holsworthy, and it's positive in attracting and retaining senior medical staff, which has become a major issue for the medical services of North Devon and Florida. So I've had a late update from South West Water 2 days ago, formal comment. They did let me know about a week ago that this was coming. Basically, the sewer network is insufficient. So they've recommended a Grampian condition and foul drainage, or I think it's all foul drainage condition could be applied to any approval. So the site occupies an agricultural field situated at the edge of Littleham. It's contained to the north, south and west by residential development and to the east by agricultural land. The lower part of the application site has benefited in the past from outline permission for 2 dwellings, and the top half, including the right hand, the north east corner, has 5. So the site has potential for 7. All of those outline permissions have expired. The dwelling Silverwood in the south east corner is one of the 2 dwellings that were outlined, was approved at reserve matters and has been built. And the site is accessed from the south from private road, which leads to Lankerton Manor. So in policy terms, policy ST07 identifies both local centres and villages. Littleham is not identified within either. Part 3 of this policy states that in rural settlements which contain at least 1 prescribed service or community facility, appropriately located development of a modest scale will be enabled to meet locally generated needs. So Littleham contains a pub and a Methodist church, and the planning officers consider it to be a rural settlement. DM24 is relevant for qualifying rural settlements, which supports proposals for local occupancy dwellings to meet a locally identified housing need. However, as my report details, The proposal is a large open market dwelling, so this is considered contrary to policies STO 7 and DM 24 of the local plan. Notwithstanding that, the Torridge and North Devon cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites. So the provisions of footnote 8 in NPPF has been applied, and the presumption in favour of sustainable development. So the planning considerations are to be weighed up with a planning balance to grant permission unless any adverse impact of doing so would significantly outweigh the benefits. The site itself is relatively well screened due to high vegetation surrounding, and it's accessed by a private road. And so your officers are of the view that there's limited harm to landscape character. However, the policies on design are still relevant. So we've got DMO4, STO4, and as my report outlines, the NPPF seeks to achieve well-designed, beautiful places. The National Design Guide sets out what context, form, scale, and proportion, and layout and density. So in terms of the material planning consideration, yeah, so this is the proposed site plan. Another one. So that is north, showing a north elevations. Floor plans, ground floor and first floor. And that's the site. And then in the design and access statement submitted from the agent, hopefully there are some aerial photos of the site.
Could you speak up? I'm sure they can't hear at the back.
Springfield has been built. Great. Yeah, so I've covered the principle of a 5-year supply, layout, density, scale, and form. Proposed developments for the erection of a single dwelling house. The size of the plot is 0.23 hectares, and the whole field is 0.6 hectares. Reference to the previous outline permissions, the field has been shown to have capacity for 7 dwellings. The application site itself has capacity to accommodate 3. So in terms of density, the proposal in the officer's view does not make efficient use of land. There's the potential to use the land for more dwellings to meet the housing targets. And the proposal will therefore be contrary to Chapter 11 of the NPPF. Outlines making effective use of land. The dwelling is approximately 28 metres in length, 17 metres in depth, and the footprint is 265 metres. Your officer is of the view that the scale of the proposed dwelling is too large. It's larger than the one to the southeast. The proposed design is also considered to not be appropriate, sympathetic to the setting, because it is out of character with the other dwellings in the area. It could be said to be innovative, but it is considered that the elongated design with staircase element creates a form of building which is at odds with others in the area and covers a larger area than is necessary. So that forms one of the reasons for refusal. In terms of access and parking, the application site includes 2 site off parking spaces and space for turning. However, in terms of the location, as already outlined, the NPPF emphasises sustainable transport modes are prioritised. This aligns with the local plan ST10. Littleham is not considered a sustainable location. The need to deliver sustainable patterns of growth is an important consideration in the NPPF. It's not close to services for daily needs. Consequently, the occupants would be reliant on a private car. So the harm arising from the relatively poor access to services and facilities by sustainable transport modes run contrary to social and environmental objectives of sustainable development. So although it meets policies DMO5 and DMO6, doesn't meet ST10 paragraphs 110 and 115 of the NPPF. In terms of residential amenity, it has more than enough internal space to comply with the national space standards. There's adequate garden area. There's adequate distance between the application and the neighbouring property, not result in overlooking. In terms of that, it meets DMO1 and DMO2. In terms of flood risk, it's in a low risk area for flooding, and there's provision for surface water on the plans. As I said, it was originally proposed that foul drainage would use the existing main sewer. However, comments from South West Water highlight the sewage treatment works have been reviewed and are no longer able to safely receive additional flows. Despite South West Water advising pre-commencement agreement, it's for the local planning authority to decide this, and the applicant was asked for detail on foul drainage. Several planning inspectors have confirmed foul drainage cannot be left until after approval. Unfortunately, there was no time for this information to be submitted and assessed, and the application did not wish to delay, so an additional reason for refusal was added. In terms of ecology, assessment has been submitted and states no further survey work is needed. It makes recommendations for bats and breeding birds, which could be added as a condition. The application is for a self-build and therefore exempt from biodiversity net gain. So in summary, local planning authority cannot demonstrate 5-year supply, and it's therefore necessary to consider whether the adverse impacts would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The proposal would provide a contribution of 1 dwelling towards the local housing supply, which would be a very modest contribution, addressing the slight housing shortfall of 192. Development would also bring some limited economic benefits to the construction industry and additional consumer spending in the local economy. It is exempt from BNG, and the introduction of it into undeveloped land would mean environmental benefits are limited. It's neutral in terms of flood risk. There's no harm to amenities and neighbouring occupiers, and it's acceptable in terms of access, parking and highway. However, proposed development is contrary to the council's spatial strategy. It's not a sustainable location. It will increase reliance on the private car and is considered to be poor design due to layout, appearance, density and scale. It's for market housing and not seeking an identified need. Slight shortfall in delivery indicates a housing need across the planning area, and this does not equate to a locally generated need envisaged by policy ST07 in conjunction with policy DM24. So my recommendation for this application is to refuse with reason on design, reason on unsustainable location and insufficient information on foul drainage.
Thank you. Our first public speaker is Mr. Matt Garcia, please. If you'd like to come to the table, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Matt Garcia. I work as a GP in Holsworthy, as a specialty doctor in ophthalmology at Barnstaple Hospital, and also as a training program director for GP training in North Devon, helping recruit and support the next generation of GPs in our community. My partner, Chris, was born and raised in Lidlam, and his family still runs Hill Services, the local coach business based in Steve Cross. And Chris is now in the process of taking the business over. Chris's brother, James, lives right next door to our proposed plot at Silverwood. So this isn't just a convenient location, it is a return home. We are not developers. We are not building a house to sell. This is our forever home, one that we spend months carefully planning to meet both our needs now and in the future. We've put everything in this project, time, energy, and a lot of thought, because this home means everything to us. It is designed with purpose and intention, and we really want to live here for decades to come. As you may be aware, Leelham, like many rural villages, has an aging population, allowing younger people with strong local ties to settle and remain here is vital to the future of the village. We believe our application reflects that. This is not just a house, it is a home for a local couple with deep connections and real commitment to the area. I'd also like to briefly address the foul drainage issue. Southwest Water only raised the objection very late in the process, after months of no objection. Even then, they clearly confirmed in writing that either Grampian-style condition or private treatment system would be acceptable. Despite this, our case officer just gave us 24 hours to decide whether to delay the entire application or accept a new refusal reason. When we then chose to proceed, we were given 48 hours just over the weekend to prepare and submit full private drainage details. That was simply not feasible in the time allowed. So to be clear, this is not a case of insufficient information being submitted. It is a case of not being given the time or reasonable opportunity to respond, despite viable solutions being on the table. So we are not asking for a special treatment, just for fairness and the opportunity to build a home close to the people and places that matter most to us. And I think if housing delivery is about anything, it should be about homes for local people with real ties to the area. And that's exactly what this is. Okay, thank you.
Dead on 3 minutes.
Sorry?
Dead on 3 minutes.
Yeah, I practice.
And next the speaker is Lewis Johnson, please.
The 5-year housing land supply places focus on infill sites and those with extant permissions, of which the site complies with both. It stated that from previous outline permission, the application site could accommodate 3 dwellings. It also goes on to state the field has been shown to have capacity for 7 dwellings, both of which are false, as this simply placed blocks on the site at outline stage with no consideration into overlooking, separation distances, amenity, and so on. Therefore, any comparison between the proposed approach density, proposed and approved density is not an accurate representation and is instead a piecemeal approach which favours the local authority's biases. Emphasis is placed through the officer's report on how unsustainable the location is, yet it goes on to place weight on increased density, which goes against this very argument. It has been stated that Littleham is not considered a sustainable location, yet in rural settlements with at least 1 prescribed service or community facility, of which Littleham has 2, there is an acceptance of modest residential development. The recent permission for 5 new houses 175 metres away and the former permissions on the application site for 5 dwellings did not use this as a reason for refusal. The efficient use of land argument favours increased density. However, the 2 points, unsustainability and increased density, contradict one another, i.e. we want increased density, but the site is unsustainable and not suitable for development. The delegated report on the recent approval for 5 houses in Littleham confirmed that in comparison to other rural settlements, Littleham could be considered more sustainable due to its size and provision of services and the local community which serves the surrounding rural area. It is acknowledged that there will still be a likely reliance on motor vehicles for day-to-day needs. However, this does not automatically dictate that the proposal is unsustainable, and many of the villages in Torridge's rural hinterland would inevitably be the same. This is clearly a differing view of the sustainability of Littleham within the same planning authority, which is evidence of an inconsistent approach to decision-making. Policies STO4 and DMO4 all have strong design focus and establish the need for development to be appropriate in and have respect for its context and setting, which was shaped by the building's proposed scale and height, recognised to be in accordance with DMO8A. Policy STO7 states design will be based on a clear process that analyses and responds to the characteristics of the site. Appropriateness and respect does not solely relate to appearance and style, where we have shown greater respect by focusing on reducing the visual dominance of the scheme to respect the surrounding context. It is reiterated that the scheme is an efficient use of land. However, there is also a great deal of emphasis on scale, mass and height. In order to respond successfully from a scale, mass and height perspective, there must be an acceptance that density and scale must be effectively balanced. Increasing density could arguably lead to an unacceptable scale. The officer's comparison between Silverwood also uses linear metres instead of overall GIA. which again distorts the figures and favours the LPA's stance. The reason for the increased ground floor
I asked you to wind up, please. You've had 3 minutes.
The reason for the increased ground floor width is due to the emphasis on reducing visual impact, which can be absorbed given how well screened the ground floor is. Overall, the dwelling is only 10 square metres larger than Silverwood adjacent.
Thank you. Before I throw the matter open for discussion, can I please ask the planning officer to reiterate what South West Water have come back with, please, and they're prepared to accept a condition.
Thank you.
Yeah, so an email was sent to myself and Ryan about 2 weeks ago saying that they discovered the sewage network was insufficient. So yesterday they gave me a formal comment, which suggests
Well, that's a comment I'm interested in, the one that you, yeah.
Yeah, this is an extract from it. It's not the whole thing. It's the relevant part of
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's essentially what's being said here is South West Water are highlighting that upgrades to enable capacity are to be delivered by March 2030. South West Water are therefore requiring either a Grampian condition or a foul water drainage strategy condition. So they provided suggestive wording for both. Now, it's up to the local planning authority, members of the committee, to decide whether such conditions would meet the tests. So in terms of a Grampian condition that's worded, it says it's requiring prior to occupation for LPA to receive confirmation from South West Water that the required upgrades works to Littleham sewage treatment works has been undertaken, or by March 2030, whichever is the sooner. Now, dealing with that condition first, such Grampian conditions really we should only be putting on if there is confidence that there is potential for what is being sought to happen outside of the permission, i.e. in this case, drainage capacity updates, to actually happen within the life of the consent. Now, were members to grant consent today, it would be a 3-year permission, which would have to be implemented by 2028. So your officers would say there's a degree of uncertainty here with whether that condition is actually achievable. You would also need to question whether it's acceptable to enable a dwelling of this scale to be built and that trigger point to be prior to occupation. So there's uncertainty in that regard. The other option is to require a foul drainage strategy to be submitted. Now, the application as submitted indicated connection to the main sewer because, you know, in fairness to the applicant, that's what he believed was achievable. We would require, for a valid application, if a foul drainage strategy is coming forward, what's known as an FDA1 form to be completed and an indicative foul drainage scheme. As the case officer highlighted, inspectors do at least require an indication that a foul drainage scheme can be achieved. And this is why the discussions, admittedly late in the process, took place with the applicant to say, well, it's open to you to submit a foul drainage strategy, because at least then when it comes to committee, there can be comfort that actually this issue with March 2030 falls away because you could, as a fallback, provide a foul drainage scheme. The difficulty we've got is that there's been no indication of whether such a foul drainage scheme can be achieved. So we would, as officers, have concerns over both of these conditions, but it is obviously open to members to make your own mind up as to whether one or both of those conditions could be included. In an ideal world, we would have had an indicative foul drainage scheme that showed that that could be achieved, a private foul drainage scheme. So your condition would ideally almost read as an either or. So if the sewage capacity was achieved within the life of the permission, then there's a mains connection, but there's a feasible fallback that you can have certainty over. So that's essentially where the difference lies.
Thank you. Councillor Pennington, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to get the opportunity. Thank you for your report. Just a couple of questions on that very point. There's been quite a bit of small development. I'm the wards in my ward, by the way, but I did not call it in. And I would be interested to, I see Councillor James is here, and I thought he was going to speak in favour.
He's not registered to speak.
He's not registered. Okay, interesting. Sorry. Littleham has had several developments. I just wondered why this is now crept in at this last moment. And secondly, does that mean we're not going to get any more building in Littleham? And that might not apply to this application. But what you're saying to Littleham residents now is, sorry, but there ain't going to be no housing in Littleham until 2030 unless you agree to a Grampian.
No, I mean, what officers are saying is it needs to be demonstrated that there's a private solution. So it's open to applicants to come forward with a private drainage solution, and that needs to be indicated at application stage.
Secondly, just as a matter of, it's a judgment, what's on the edge of a village. But I don't consider this application anywhere near the edge of the village. It's very adjacent to the very centre of the village. It's close to the Creelock, which is a very important. And we've got the reverse, the Methodist Church just up the road. So you can either have teetotal or alcohol if you so wish in two places. And we've got a village hall, very sustainable location. So I've just put that as I'm a resident of Littleham as well, and it's just out over the hill there. But it is a very sustainable location, and I feel that has not been fairly represented in this situation. It's not on the edge of the village. There is good communications, and a lot that happens in the village. And I'll stop there for the time being, Chair, if I may.
Councillor Bushby, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. If we were reminded to approve this application, I say if, surely a condition could be put on that. I mean, it's a large enough site, and one of the conditions could be that a suitable solution is found to address the issue that is being discussed here. If it can't go under the main sewer for the time being anyway, then it's a large site. Surely an engineering solution could be found, to accommodate that. That's the first point that I wanted to make. I mean, I do take issue with several of the comments that the case officer has highlighted. Can we just go back to one of the slides where it gives a sort of an aerial view of the surrounding properties? As much has been said about the size, the size of the property that's being considered here. Well, if you look around, there are quite a few properties there that are in large plots, and they look to be reasonably large properties themselves. And personally, I mean, I think they should be commended by putting in something which is a little bit different. Why does it all have to be a small square box that we see on most of the developments that we given before? So I think it's a lovely site, and I thought the design that was on the screen was a bit futuristic. Yes, it's slightly different than what you've got there now, but very attractive to my mind. And I'm going to move that we approve it. Come on to the grounds in a minute, possibly.
You've got to come up with planning reasons as well. So I'm sure you'll put your mind to that in a minute. Councillor Apple, you were next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I, like Councillor Bushby, well, I like the design. I think it's innovative. I think it's wonderful. A lot of thought has gone into it, and it's obviously the architects obviously worked very closely with the applicants in getting there. I'm slightly confused about the drainage issue, because surely if the argument is that one of the arguments against the application is that it's just one house as opposed to three, it's insufficient use of land, how do you connect those three to the drainage system?
Just picking up on the drainage, so there would need to be a private solution, and with the fallback of connection in the future when there's an upgrade.
If there's one house, then it would be for 3 or 5.
I'm not a drainage expert,
Well,
I can't comment on that.
I'm pretty certain it would be. And also on the design, I mean, clearly this is a design specifically for the applicants. It's not a speculative design. Okay, it's an open market application, but the need is there. It's yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Bushby's recommendation.
Councillor Whittaker?
Well, thank you, Chair. I want to support this application as well, because, you know, throughout our officer's presentation, a great deal was said in support of this application, unless I was mishearing. You know, various comments were made, and that would have been okay, or, you know, we could have supported this. So I'm a little bit, it almost feels to me it's one of these on balance, and you could drop down on either side. So I don't think it would do any harm actually to approve this application. I was a little bit concerned about the applicant's apparent, you know, I'm not the applicant and I wasn't there, ability to respond to something in a very short period of time about something that is quite significant to their application. And that really worries me, because if that be the case, wouldn't the most sensible thing and the most suitable thing would be to put it back for a month?
That was the option
Yeah.
that was suggested.
And okay, so obviously the applicant didn't want to do that, because, you know, I'm just wondering why. However, I still would support it. I can't think how you can say it's unsustainable. I mean, I think my colleagues already said why they don't think it's unsustainable. You know, in the middle, in what is actually all but the middle of the village, with a pub, a church, I think public transport, I'm not absolutely sure, but everybody in that
Once a
village.
week. Once a week.
No, don't be horrid. Well, once a week is public transport. So I honestly don't think we could hang our hat on unsustainable. Sorry, I'm going to go with my colleagues and say we should grant this.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Litland Parish Council's comments, they support it.
Yeah.
But they support a self-build. But in the officer's report, you refer to open market, but it's not open market if it's self-build.
You know, it is open market in that it's not.
What, but it's self-build, so we could put that self-build condition on it.
Yeah, but it would still be an unrestricted dwelling beyond that. There would be nothing to stop the applicant after the 3 years selling it on the open market.
But then, yeah, we could put that condition on relating to self-build after 3 years.
Yeah, the self-build condition requires input from the first occupants in terms of the design, layout, internal fittings, and then a requirement for them to reside there for 3 years. After the 3 years, it could be sold on the open market. It's not a local needs dwelling, and just picking up on the sustainability comment. So the local plan is obviously still your starting point. So STO 7.3 addresses rural settlements and the appropriate scale and level of development, which it identifies as being modest and for local needs. And there is therefore conflict with that element of the policy, which would then link to policy DM24, which seeks to sort of ensure that appropriately scaled dwellings come forward. So there is that conflict, and your officer has placed significant weight against that harm, given that we do only have a very slight shortfall in terms of 5-year housing land supply. So the sustainability credential of the site is very much directed by the local plan, which is your starting point. So just to explain the background to that provision coming forward, and, you know, noting what the agent said around inefficient use of land, and that's like, it's like conflict with the officer saying, well, you could get more on here, but it's not a sustainable location. The case officer's report is very clear in noting subject to local needs being evidenced and demonstrated. So I hope that helps in just explaining the rationale that the officer is coming from in terms of sustainability.
I mean, I also agree with Councillor Pennington about Littleham. I mean, it's got a church, it's got a public house, it's got a vibrant village hall. It's literally 3 miles south of Bideford, and it really annoys me when people say they've got to jump into their cars to go shopping. Well, you go to a big housing estate in any big city, or even Bideford, how many people jump in their car and drive to shops, to go to the high street? It's not just because you live in a rural area that you use your car to go shopping. So, I mean, the only reason I was going to not support the application was the drainage one, but I think I might have been with these conditions we can put on. Yes, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'd like to support the officer really. I consider it is an inappropriate design for the location. It clearly is against the policies. It doesn't fit the character of the rest of the village, I don't think. I'm sympathetic to the need, to the desire to build something there, but I think this is not appropriate in design terms. I do also query the sustainability in terms of environmental gain. It's stated in the application that there'll be a solar gain because of the presumably amount of glass, but I do wonder how that's going to be sustainable as we see increased temperatures in the future. So I wonder about the design accommodating that situation really. But basically, I don't like the design really.
Before we take the matter any further, can we have a vote on to extend the meeting beyond 3 hours, please?
Yeah, close.
All in favour? Okay.
Sorry.
Right, anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, councillor Leather.
Yeah.
Chair, I'll speak in a minute as well.
The principle of development on this site's already been established. The outline application in 2016 was for 3 dwellings, but then they changed it to 2. So part of this site was already, the whole site actually has been earmarked for development. So there's no issue about whether this site could be developed. I thought it a bit of a cheat really, criticising the design of it. There's nothing wrong with the design of it. I like it. I think Councillor Heppel said he likes it as well. I think it's an innovative design. It's a large building, but then again, Silverwood, the one across, the new one, that's large. Langleton Manor is large. There's a lot of large properties with large gardens in the area. It fits in all right. It's on quite a well-screened site there. And I agree with Councillor Pennington. For me, it's in the middle of the village, not on the edge of the village. And that condition printed off actually, about the sewage, the condition, the drainage strategy condition to be agreed by planning, and I'm going to support it, Chair.
Have you got references for the drainage strategy?
Well, it's just what Northwest Water.
Oh, right. So
wording here for a foul drainage strategy condition would be as follows. No development approved by this permission shall be commenced until details of a scheme for the provision of foul water management has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. The details shall include a description of the foul water drainage system. It could be a package treatment plant. Details of the final drainage scheme, including estimated volume of wastewater from the development at full occupation. And if connection to the public network is proposed, confirmation from South West Water that they will accept the flows from the development into their network, and a timetable of construction. Reason: to minimise the risk of pollution by ensuring the provision of a satisfactory means of foul water disposal. Well, we all know that if you put this package treatment plant in down the road, it can be done away with and you can connect into the main sewer. But the good point was made by Helen that South West Water, just love them, can't for some reason get these improvements done till probably 2030, which to me is ridiculous. And that would negate any planning approval for it to connect. The granting condition just falls away after 3 years, and they'd have to be reapplying then for permission. So I'm going to support the approval recommendation. I don't agree with a lot of the reasons given for refusal, particularly the NPPF ones. You read through them.
So just confirm that we can put those conditions that Councillor Leather has just read out, we can include those in our conditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
As officers have said, I think you would normally want comfort that a scheme could be achieved, but if members are satisfied to go ahead with that condition, then it's open to you to do that.
Yeah, right. Councillor Heppel, you wanted to
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification on a planning issue, please. The local need requirement, surely that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be small houses, does it?
So,
or not innovatively designed even?
So the local need requirement, that's your starting point in this location, that it should be, have a local need restriction
Yeah,
on it.
What I'm saying is that I think the first speaker was saying it is a local need.
But it's not restricted to local needs, so anybody could live there, is, I would say on that point. So to comply with the policy, we would expect it to be described as a local need dwelling and have a legal agreement to.
But does that
restrict
necessarily
that.
mean small?
And then that follows on to policy DM24, which requires that any such local needs dwelling has to be of a, I can't remember the exact words, Councillor Heppel, but it has to relate
with
the needs of the occupants. So that suggests not unnecessarily large, I suppose. So that's your starting point in terms of policy. And the proposal does clearly conflict with those policies. But you are making this decision under the tilted balance. And for you as a determining committee, it's how much weight you want to put to those conflicts against the benefit of a dwelling. Now, your officer has applied a balance which is consistent with appeal decisions and the fact we have a very slight shortfall. But it is open to you as a committee to tilt that balance differently. And I think it would just help that that's articulated as part of the recommendation.
Councillor Pennington.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to go back on, and I understand where the offers are coming from, because it seems, you know, when we look at Bideford, we looked at the big 183 development this morning, first of all, and you see it's going on, I can't remember what the hectareage, 37 hectares or something or other at the time this morning, and you divide that up, and it seems a bit unfair. And yeah, I represent a rural ward, and it drives me around the bend sometimes when people come through with 2 and 3 and 4 houses, and they're big houses because they're below the 5 houses supply, I think, before they got to look at various issues that come through from that point of view. But equally, you have to balance it up with where it is and what's happening. And the other issue we haven't touched on this morning is self-build housing, because it does say in our own local plan at 719, the government is seeking to increase the supply of housing through self-build schemes, including individually properties, custom-built developer schemes, and the provision of self-build housing through cooperatives. So we already have that, and I would give that as one of the reasons that 719 comes under ST 17, I think it is. So self-build housing is specifically mentioned in our plan. So I see that in favor, but I do hear about the size. And I've looked at the design of this because it is quite a unique property. I looked at it there, but it's well designed after all when I think about it, because nobody can see it from anywhere. It's quite incredible when you look at the levels around the village and where it is. And on balance, I can see there's more in favour of it and on the tilted balance than there is against it. And I just wonder if I could argue that paragraph 84 of the National Policy Planning Framework, which is exceptional builds, because this is quite an exceptional design. So I would give that as an additional reason if we are going, and I would then vote with the application, the grant is to approve the property. So I give those as my situation. But I hear, about the use of space in the countryside as well from our worker officers stuff. But that's where I'm coming from, Chair. Thank you.
Any further comments? No. Oh yes, Councillor Leather.
Just briefly, it amazes me when we talk about sustainable villages and sustainability, that Littleham, which is a large village, is not even on the list in here, and yet Bucks Cross is. There's a Schedule B village, Bucks Cross, which is a hamlet, is a hamlet, and Littleham, which goodness knows how many times bigger than Bucks Cross, isn't even mentioned. And you only drive down from this side and you're on the Bradworthy Road, which is a very good road to get to Bideford or anywhere else. So,
what, 3 miles south of Bideford?
Yeah.
Right. So we have discussed it long and hard. I think I know which way we are going. It has been proposed by Councillor Bushby, seconded by Councillor Heppel, that the application is approved, subject, and we're going on the tilted balance.
Absolutely.
ST 17, N84.
ST 17 is sort of specialist housing. I wouldn't necessarily bring that in.
Right, ST 04 then.
And I would just say on the para 84 of the MPPF, that looks more at isolated homes in the countryside, and Part E is
just on the edge of the village.
well, I think there's very few of these across the country, and it talks about exceptional quality and set criteria. So I wouldn't
Go with that.
suggest. I don't think you need to bring that
All right.
into it.
STO4, STO7.
I think I would just say you can't say it's in compliance with STO7. I think you have to acknowledge the conflict, but under the tilted balance, put more weight
Right.
to the dwelling is the way I would encourage
Right.
that members look at it.
So it has been approved by, proposed by Councillor Bushby, seconded by Councillor Heppel, that this application is approved under the tilted balance. And we can work with
Yeah,
that.
that's fine. Could we just, conditions, I would suggest that they are delegated to the officers to prepare and agree the wording with chair and vice chair. There are the usual conditions that we've put on, but I think in this case, specific conditions that are required is the self-build condition, the drainage condition. I think we need landscaping and boundary treatment conditions to secure those. Permitted development rights, I would encourage those to be removed given the scale of the dwelling in the first place. I think that is reasonable to do that. And then the usual conditions that we would apply, that we can agree those with chair and vice chair if the committee are happy.
Is everyone satisfied with that?
Yeah.
So we will now go to the vote then, please approve the application.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bushby.
For.
Councillor Hames.
Against.
Councillor Heppel.
For.
Councillor Leather.
For.
Councillor Locke.
For.
Councillor Whitaker.
For.
Councillor O'Rourke.
For.
Councillor Pennington.
For.
Councillor Harding.
For.
That's 8 for and 1 against, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Another one.
Right. Moving on to application 13. Application number 1/0306. Outline with all matters reserved for one dwelling, self-build, with reference 242690/127022 Abington. It's on pages 95 to 106 of your agenda. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, the officer will now get the presentation then.
Chair, this application has been called in, Councillor Ken James. If the officer is minded to refuse, that is why it's before you. So the application relates to a parcel of land outside of Abington, about 280 metres if you walked along the road to the site. The access and private track lead to a building that appears to be in equestrian use. So an indicative site plan has been submitted, shows dwelling in the centre of the site, parking and turning, enclosed by Devon hedge bank, and surface water is shown on to be to an attenuation crate, foul water to be managed by a new package treatment plant. Previous planning application for this site was refused, which had exactly the same indicative site plan, and it was refused because it was in a countryside location. And that was during a time when the local planning authority could demonstrate 5 years supply. Yeah, so this is the site, looking from the access. That's the access. And that's looking at the equestrian building further down the fields. So once again, we're looking at STO7, which states that in countryside, beyond local centres, villages and rural settlements, development will be limited to that which is enabled to meet local and economic needs. The proposal is for an open market dwelling, therefore it's contrary to policies STO7. However, it's necessary to apply the presumption in favour of sustainable development in the NPPF. So I've weighed up the planning considerations. Character and appearance, more to do with landscape impact. It's outlined, so we don't have any designs to assess. The officer's view is it would change the character of the site to a significant degree. Characteristics of the site are that there are trees along the edge of an existing dwelling. And then there are open fields where the application is. So it's considered to be open countryside, being placed into open fields and have a harmful and detrimental impact on the character of the area. It's considered the proposed dwelling would appear as an incongruous feature within the local area, despite us having control of detailed design through reserved matters. It does not hold a visual relationship with Abbotshire. Size of the plot is approximately 100 square metres more than the existing dwelling to the north. The site is detached from the other two dwellings, and it is also considered to be inefficient use of land. So therefore, contrary to STM 4D and MO4D MOA. In terms of residential amenity, that would come through observed matters. The local authority could have more control over detailed design at that point. Considered there aren't any issues in terms of overlooking the lack of privacy. In terms of biodiversity, the application has a wildlife trigger list which confirms a survey is not required. The site plan includes the new Devon hedge bank and would deliver new native species hedge banks and tree planting. Because it is a self-built home, it's therefore exempt from biodiversity and plain. In terms of highways, existing access offers acceptable visibility. Surrounding network can accommodate vehicle movements. The indicative site plan shows parking. However, in terms of more of a strategic approach, the village of Abbotshire is located 250 metres to the south. There is an informal footpath alongside the road. It's elevated and it's considered by the officers to be unsafe to walk. It's unlit and there's no pavement. So this is not an acceptable route for sustainable travel. Taking into account the above, it's contrary to policy ST10 and the NPPF. In terms of foul and surface water, will be discharged to a packaged treatment plant. Environmental protection team have been consulted and they have their objections. If for any reason this needs to be changed, the applicant will need to come in with a variation of the plans. At the last minute, I had a neighbour comment that the discharge to a stream was not continually running, so it's too late. It's past the consultation period, but I have let them know that if the drainage scheme needs to be changed, they need to come back in with new plans. So in summary, the local planning authority cannot demonstrate 5-year supply, and so the tilted balance has been applied. It would provide a contribution of one dwelling towards local housing supply, but very modest, and there's only a slight housing shortfall. It would bring some limited economic benefits. Biodiversity enhancements could be achieved. However, the introduction on undeveloped land would mean environmental benefit neutral. It is considered it would not be suitable as it's in the open countryside and would have an adverse impact on landscape setting. The need to deliver sustainable patterns of growth is important in the NPPF, and the proposal for market housing is not seeking to address an identified need. So therefore, the recommendation is to refuse the application.
Our first registered speaker is Sue Webster, please.
Good afternoon. I'm the applicant. My late husband and myself purchased this parcel of land over 25 years ago, and it was always a dream that one day we'd be able to live on there and play at the same time. The field has always been an extension to our own garden at home and has already started to become domesticated. Ever since we'd have had the site, we've always had a vegetable plot on there. Yes, we keep a couple of ponies for our daughters. We have tame sheep and now we have some chickens. I attend site at least 3 times a day. By living on site, this would reduce the travelling there. It would be a self-build brick bungalow, 1.5 stories high, with the provisions, hopefully with an annex for mother. Already adjoining the site is a bungalow, and you've already granted permission for a 2-story house as well. So I would not be on my own. I was delighted to hear on the 6th of June that the planning application had been granted. However, they wanted an extension of 2 weeks so that they could get sign off on it, to then be told 2 weeks later that a change of mind and it had been refused. So having egg on my face, I have had to contact all the local trade that I'd already got on side to put on their waiting list to be able to start work for me, including an architect, had to be done. The site could be reduced because there is a water main, a trunk main that runs inside 5 meters inside the hedge. So I would not be able to build within 8 meters of the hedge anyway. Plans will be drawn up to include landscaping, and it would be sympathetic to the area that we sit in, to show the commitment that I am prepared to build this. I'm prepared to reduce the time limit for matters to 12 months. I also understand that there has been an objection from a neighbour with regards to discharging into the stream that runs below. The stream has never, in the time that I've owned this land, gone dry. In fact, South West Water discharge into this river already. So it's not one that can go dry. The property, the gentleman concerned also mentions about a pond that's already situated in his garden. This pond was already in situ when he purchased the property and does flow into the Kenwith Viaduct.
I'll ask you to wind up, please.
Yes, I'd like to thank you and hope you would consider my application. Thank you.
The next speaker is Debbie Newcombe.
Good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak today in support of this application. My name is Debbie Newcombe and I'm the agent for this application, which received a late call in due to different views between the case officer and head of planning. The site is a short distance to the north of Abbotsham and next door to Springfield, which received planning permission for a new
Sorry,
dwelling.
could you speak up? We can't hear.
Okay, sorry. Is that better?
A bit.
Bit better. Keep going. Sorry. The site is a short distance to the north of Abbotsham and next door to Springfield, which received planning permission for a new dwelling when the council could not demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The previous application on the site was 2 weeks away from a decision when the council announced that they had a 5-year land supply. At the time, the officer did not raise any concerns in his delegated report, only refusing the application because it was outside the development boundary. The key to this application is the precedent that has been set by the approval of a dwelling adjacent to the site. The council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. How much weight can be given to the council's local plan policy STO1 and STO7 is uncertain, and this has been demonstrated within the planning department, with the case officer writing a delegated report for approval and the head of planning saying it should be recommended for refusal. The site is compliant with policy STO1 as it's close to the village, which has many facilities as detailed in the officer report. The bus stops offer regular services for residents to use the 319, which provides 7 trips in each direction on Mondays to Fridays and 6 trips on Saturdays. These are all during the daytime and not at night. They travel from Bideford to Barnstaple, as well as the villages along the A39 to Hartland. Villages becoming closer to Bideford as each new housing development on Abbotsham Road stretches towards the village. The approved site at Springfield was considered to be a sustainable location using verges to reach the bus stop. Verges are regularly cut with a pathway to allow people from Springfield area to walk safely. With regard to the character and appearance of the officer, refers to policies relating to design. This outline application seeks all matters to be reserved. An appropriate design would be created for the dwelling, ensuring that it fits into the landscape with the backdrop of the properties at Springfield. Both the previous officer and the current case officer accept that residential on the site would change the character of the site. The previous officer accepted that the proposal would accord with policies STO4, DMO4 and DMO8A of the local plan. It's difficult to understand how this single dwelling would have such a big impact when both the Ultimate High and its holiday lodges and the Big Sheep.
Can I ask you to wind up, please?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of lines left, sorry. And the Big Sheep is campsite. The slopes fill the slopes around the village. The first case officer concluded that given the context of other built form and clusters of dwellings, the proposal would not appear as an incongruous feature within the local area, also noting that the local planning authority would have control of the detailed design through consideration of reserved matters. We feel that the application.
I really must ask you, I've been more than generous.
Okay.
You've had only 4 minutes.
Okay, sorry. We feel that the application should be approved when applying a tilted balance due to lack of 5-year housing land supply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. I had timed it before, but obviously I had a break in the middle trying to get the voice up.
Right, so that was the end of our registered speakers. I'll now throw open the matter for discussion. Who'd like to kick off, please? Yes, Councillor Leather.
I'm just a bit perplexed about the red line on the site. Can you go back to where there it is? You can see it on there. That's the red line of the site, isn't it? And the blue line is the rest of the land that they own. Well, the red line is far larger than the actual site. If that's granted outline permission, you could put more than one dwelling in there. I just wonder why they want to extend the red line to that kind of an area.
I think I made that point that it was an efficient use of land.
I think it is. I mean,
it's 100 square meters more than the one.
It's a lot bigger than the actual site showing the outline of a bungalow. So if it was granted, they could come back and put more properties in there.
I think
there's the principle of development will be accepted.
Is that not a track, that other red line?
Looking at
the other building is the bar.
To the right is drainage, so that goes off to a water course.
It's just a very large area to give outline permission for, in my book.
Yeah, but it's just a little confusing when you relate it to what's in the plan here, because that just shows what looks like what I took to be an access track.
That's a line for drainage connection.
Yeah, well, I think there's some confusion as to the size of the site.
Yeah.
So what exactly are we talking about here? The square?
Just a square.
It's the square adjacent to the road?
Yeah, the right hand
Left.
is the formal location plan, Councillor Bushby. So the red, not quite a square, that is the application site that's before you.
So we could disregard everything where the red line sort of goes off.
That's purely to show how the drainage connection would work to a water course.
So it's got nothing to do with the actual application that we're talking about.
The way the red line goes,
Yes.
like that's where the drainage connection would follow.
Well,
So
we're not-
it's part of the application.
But only for drainage, not for the actual development.
No, you're absolutely
So it shouldn't
right.
be
So it's, because you can see that doesn't
Shouldn't be in red.
then close.
Definitely shouldn't be a red.
That red line doesn't close round, I don't think, does it?
No.
It's difficult to
Can
see
you
with
zoom
the
in on the picture? It might be how you can't.
We can on that one, but
Right.
So that's better.
It's hard to see. The red line doesn't look to continue along that north boundary.
All right, so it is,
So it's just a square, more or
Yeah.
less a square.
Yeah.
but I know, Chair, that there was an application which was refused in 2023. which I think when I looked at it is exactly the same as this application. In a full application for self-build, we'd have had more to work with, but I can't support it as it is, Chair.
Well, I was a bit confused because it's listed as self-build, but in the agent's documents, if you read that online, it states that local services will be used for the erection of the new dwelling. So I didn't quite follow.
That wouldn't necessarily preclude it being self-build. The definition is sort of wider than the individual building it themselves. There's certain criteria that would have to be met.
Right. So you're happy with that then, right? Yes, Councillor Haynes.
Well, just to reiterate, Councillor Evans, it was refused permission in 2 years ago, but presumably it's been put forward now because of the lack of housing supply.
I can clarify that. So there was a housing land supply when it was refused before. You have a different sort of situation before you in that there isn't now. So the tilted balance is engaged. Your officer's recommendation it sort of sets that harm with the conflict. This isn't a settlement. It's in the countryside, so there is that conflict with SGO 7, which your officer has put significant weight to, against the benefit of a single dwelling in this location. So that's the difference, Councillor Holmes, with the basis for how you're determining it.
Yes, Councillor Bushman.
Oh, Councillor Whittle was first.
No, I'm not past you, go.
So the tilted balance applies again to this development as well. On that case, I'm going to recommend that we approve it, because I mean this is a relatively small development on the outskirts of Amersham. I mean, just down the bottom of the hill, there was 60 or 70 bungalows on the Kenmouth development. So it's not like we're introducing anything new into this area. It just seems, I don't know why we can't do more to support this type of applicant, because it's a self-build. It's someone that obviously lives in the area. They've lived there use that land for considerable time. It's next door to an already existing property, which I understand has got permission to build another property there. I really can't see the harm that's ever going to do. So on the tilted balance, I'm going to propose that we accept it.
Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it and speak.
Oh, I'm afraid Councillor Hepple had his hand up.
Okay.
After you, Jen.
Oh, no. Do you want to second it or do you want to speak?
I was going to second it, and
Right, I'll let you go first then.
my only concern is that the blue line obviously encompasses quite a lot of land to the south of the subject site. And could this, if we grant permission, could it be a dangerous precedent for subsequent applications?
On that point, each case is on its merits. I think that, as members appreciate. However, what I would say is there is an element to that point, because if you're saying with planning, with our local plan, we direct development to settlements. You've just approved a dwelling because you were satisfied it was within Littleham. This is a countryside location. How would you view a whole line of dwellings making its way back to Amersham? I think that's a potential consequence of this. Your officer's recommendation is obviously a refusal. However, any future applications would be considered on their own merits as well.
Any further comments?
Oh, you finished.
Finished. Yeah, my concern is that.
Chair.
Okay.
Councillor Whittaker's next. Then it's you, Councillor Leather.
Right. Well, talking about the size of the plot, the applicant said, I think I'm right. Well, I think I heard it right, that she would reduce the size of the plot that she's going to use, or where she's going to put, hopefully, her proposed building. I can't really see that it's harmful, to be honest with you. And I think when you talk about the open countryside, to me, it's right out in the open countryside. I mean, you've got a complete development just down the hill. It's been there for years. You've got a recently approved something almost beside this site. I don't think unsustainable is fair. The path I've walked loads of times because I walk in that area, and it's quite safe, the path up to the village. There's a bus route, there's a pub. I really don't think unsustainable really fits the bill, if I'm entirely honest with you. I really don't think that we've got there's an awful lot against this application and a great deal for it, in my mind, anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Leather.
Yeah. Yeah, we apply the tilted balance at the present time because we're slightly under the 5-year housing land supply. But that doesn't mean automatically anybody can apply for anything anywhere. And this is out the countryside. It's not in Abbotsford at all. You know, we have to look at each one on its merit. But the last one we had was definitely within Lisbon. This is outside, and down the bottom isn't down the bottom. It's quite a way down to the Kenmouth care home site, quite a way down from here, down over the hill and around the corner. And that was a completely different application for that care village in there, Kenmouth Castle Care Village. So this is an isolated dwelling in, for me, what is open countryside. And if we'd had a self-build full application with more information about why it was needed, then we've got more to work with. But just outline, and the property next door that got permission, they only got permission when we didn't have a 5-year housing land supply then. So I get the feeling this has been put in now because we've not got this 5-year land supply at the minute. But you've got to still consider that, but look at it on its merits. And I just don't think we should be allowing dwellings stuck out the countryside.
So are you recommending refusal?
Well, it's been recommended for approval, hasn't it, and seconded, hasn't it? Refusal.
Yes, Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you. I would definitely like to recommend that this is approved. And the reason is I live very close to Abersham Road. And the amount of buildings that we have, you're going to find it difficult to differentiate between the town and the countryside. That border of what you all knew of in the past, slowly stretching further, and our housing developments are exceeding what you would have normally have known as. I see building developments, I get stopped by road traffic, the inconvenience of it all, but it's necessity. And these people seem to be very much linked into the area already. And why should we not allow them to have the benefits of what we're allowing our other bigger building estates?
Any further comment?
Could I just
Yeah,
come back on that point? So, yeah, there is a lot of development going on, Councillor O'Rourke, but that is all happening within development boundaries on allocated sites and in accordance with the local plan that is our starting point. And as Councillor Leather highlighted, this is in the countryside. The plan does not support this form of development in this location, and that is still your starting point, and you would have to satisfy yourself that the benefit of a single dwelling in this location outweighs that clear policy conflict, and that has to be seen in the context of there being a very slight shortfall in housing supply of only sort of circa 190 dwellings across the whole of northern Devon. So the tilted balance is applied differently depending on those wider circumstances. So I just wanted to emphasise.
Thank you for explaining.
Councillor Bennington.
Yeah, just to say, this is a really difficult one for me. I'm again the ward member for Abersham. You want to see families, have and achieve what they want, but we're balancing and we have to go by the local planning here. And the tilted balance, and I on balance, I'm struggling. I like the idea of self-build because I think self-build brings in, but the self-build does not outweigh the STO7 for me at this one. So I'm going to vote in with Councillor Leather at the present moment on the balance of this one.
So you would second the refusal?
I would second the refusal, yes. Sadly.
Councillor Whittaker, you've got your hand up.
Well, I just want to come back and say, I was talking about the buildings just down the road. I wasn't talking about the housing development by Kenmouth Castle. Admittedly, that is a completely different application and doesn't reflect what I'm thinking about here. There are houses dotted all the way. I mean, you look there's a house on the corner just down the road. If you're going to call this the open countryside, well, I don't know what you'll call the real open countryside, if I'm entirely honest with you. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the open countryside out there. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think you have to be fair, and I think we're here to try and be fair. and you've got another building that's just been approved almost beside it. You've got houses down the road. I can't see it's unsustainable. So honestly, I think I've got to vote for it.
Councillor Harden.
Well, yeah, I can see where everybody's coming from because, yeah, it is quite contentious. I mean, if you have more information, if they had put in plans showing what it would look like in situ and that, it would be a little bit easier for it. But basically, we've got all the information in front of us. Even the parish council have said they support it. I mean, that's got to have some weight, and you know, I think I would be inclining to support it.
Yes, Councillor Bushman, did you have your hand up? Or you just waving? Right.
Just waving.
Right, has anyone else got anything further to say? So the first, I think Councillor Leather. Will the approval for yeah. So it has been suggested for approval by Councillor Bushby, seconded by Councillor Heppel, showing the tilted balance.
Yeah, correct.
So,
And are you delegating conditions?
well, yeah.
The agreement with chair and vice chair?
Yes, no problem with that.
Right, can we go to the vote then to approve?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bushby.
For.
Councillor Haynes.
Against.
Councillor Heppel. Councillor Leather.
Against.
Councillor Locke.
Against.
Councillor Whitaker. For. Councillor O'Rourke. For. Councillor Pennington.
Against.
Councillor Harding.
For.
Oh no. That's 5 for and 4 against, Chair.
So the application is approved. Thank you very much. Right, moving swiftly on now then to the rest of the agenda.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Item number 14, the appeal decisions, 107 to 157. Any comments on those?
Been a busy couple months with appeal decisions coming in, hence there's so many.
Just interested in the marketplace one on page 126.
That the listed building.
The listed building one,
Yeah.
yeah. Is that safety over heritage, is it basically?
Yeah, I mean, the conservation officer was really disappointed in that decision, as you would expect. Obviously we have to respect the decision of the inspector on that one. So.
Appreciate the difficulty because I mean, Councillor Bushby and I have talked about Bideford's many listed buildings and people needing to come up to standard, but you've got one listed, and I'm just interested. No way.
Yeah, we're looking at that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I pointed out on page 107, the second one down, Newlands at Dowlands. That was in my patch, and the gentleman concerned got his planning permission, but one of the conditions removed permitted development rights. And his agent advised him to appeal against that permitted development rights removal in case he wanted to put a garden shed or something in his garden. So that's why Mr. Gent appealed, and the appeal was allowed. So, but he'd already got his planning permission, but wanted that particular condition removed, which I found quite strange. But there you go.
5 Acre Wood, I thought. 5 Acre Wood has got 3 appeals in there or something. Have I read that?
Yeah. There's been a few.
Anything else on?
If I could just highlight on page 109, the battery storage in Pyworthy. So I know there was a long discussion with the committee around that one, and the inspector has allowed that. We may well have more of these coming forward. So I think sort of an understanding of the inspector's reasonings would, in that balance of countryside location. Yes, I think we all can.
Can I ask you?
Can we not, Kit?
We can.
What's the financial implications of that to Torwich?
Well, it's a battery storage. I think it's with solar potentially where there's that.
I remember the discussion.
No
we
cost.
refused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No cost.
Was
We
no
thought there might be, and that was worrying me, but no
Oh, do
cost.
you mean in terms of costs?
Yeah.
No, in terms of
Rates.
costs, everything that the potentially Torres could have earned out of that battery
Oh, right,
storage.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
By refusing it, we obviously
Oh,
cut that off.
Yeah, it's a battery storage as
Now they've got it.
to solar, so I'm not entirely sure if that.
They wouldn't have given anything.
They would have given it.
Oh, do you mean community benefit?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
All of the benefits that would have come into Torres had we granted permission.
Yeah, so the
In
community,
other words, did we lose all that by refusing it?
They were on-
Okay, got it on.
the community benefit side of things isn't a planning matter. That would be something that they could still offer outside of the planning system, and that would be a package of, sometimes it's sort of a fund that community groups can apply to, but that isn't something that we would have secured anyway through the planning process.
Let me go on to cost of appeals, 158, 162. Any comments on that? Delegation decisions, AGMB, 163, 164. No, then we go on to planning decisions. 165. 166. The last one, is that the one that we refused twice at committee with the
Yes.
the railings?
Yes.
Sorry.
It is, isn't it? I'm sure it's the same.
Yeah, yes, it is. Ashley Clements. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a certificate application.
Certificate. Yeah.
So how did that work out?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because they have refused that twice.
We
Yeah.
tried, yeah.
So committee.
Genuine reasons.
Yes, so committee refused it twice as a planning application. They've obviously come in with a certificate proposal to say that the works they've done are permitted development, potentially is all I can see
But it's
there.
still got new gates and pillars.
It's across the height.
Yeah, so that's been approved. So whether they are, what, and again, I don't know the detail of this, but I'm assuming what may have happened is that they've proposed something that fits within permitted development.
Yeah, the heights of the hedge.
Yeah, I think that's what that must
There's
mean.
still aspects of it which are part of our refusal, I thought, which aren't contained within that.
Yeah, we would need to pick that up through the enforcement case, councillor Holmes, and just see if what bearing this has on the previous. Yes.
Yeah, I found
Yeah.
that quite
Very
intriguing.
strongly about that.
Yeah, no,
And
I
had,
know.
You know, really legitimate concerns. And it came back twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can check that and let you know the applications.
167,
Yeah, James.
168. 169. 170. 171. 172. 173. 174. 175. 176. 177. Yeah, I do, yes.
Yeah, the multi-fuel group one, Morrison's garage.
Yeah, I've got that.
Morrison's. I'm absolutely gobsmacked at that being granted like that, being refused like that, because there was a joint application which included the relocation of the washing facility. Then they split it into two. That's been granted. The washing facility is on part of the car park where the big skips are now. That's been, but still they're refusing this. And the reason they put is, in the opinion of the local planning authority, the proposed development would introduce a hot food takeaway use within walking distance of a place where children and young people congregate, namely Bideford Courts, Plaza State, Marland Primary School, St Mary's Church of England Primary School, Torres Children's Centre, which is in the park, Bideford and District C Cadets, Bideford Squadron RAF Air Cadets, and Victoria Park, including the play area, public open space and swimming pool. It's ridiculous. I mean, and they say it's not in the town centre, Morrison's. Well, it is, to all intents.
Well, they don't say it's in the open countryside.
How, yeah. How do they define it as not being in the town centre?
We do park, Chris, it's got a
But they did,
takeaway.
they did say it was going to be a Greggs in there, and there is an element of some hot food with Greggs. But right next door, you got the Texaco station where you can get hot food.
Exactly that facility.
And just along the road,
But you can, yeah.
go along not far, you got the Burton Art Gallery with a great big cafe in the back. They're always into the park, so. I mean, it's absolutely.
Well, it's, you can't get your head around it.
I hope they appeal out, they get. I hope they raise.
Don't forget we're still being recorded.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're being recorded because I feel so strongly.
Need to be encouraged to appeal.
I think Ellen wants to.
Well, all I would say,
Have decision.
there's a very clear direction in the MPPF now. It's not a balanced decision, a very clear direction. And so the officer was right to follow that direction. Yes, it's open to them to appeal. And it would be an interesting appeal decision.
Yes, nothing at all in our local plan about it.
No, but the MPPF is more recent and that takes.
Yeah, but it
precedent.
doesn't demand that you do this.
Yeah, it clearly directs it. And I
It was
agree.
put in, sorry, Helen, but it was put in there to stop people building things like takeaways near schools. That's real reason it was put in, not for something like Morrison's, who've got a cafe in there anyway, in the actual store. I mean, that's why it's a ludicrous decision.
I hear your comments, councillor.
Yes, noted. Page 178.
Yes, 178.
Yes,
The very last one. Livestock pond. You're going to have a fish pond, but are you going to drown the cows or? What is a livestock pond?
I'm not sure what that is. Unfortunately, Debbie's gone. Essentially, I mean, NPD, I think it indicates not permitted development. So it's obviously come in as a prior notification claiming it's for agriculture. I don't know the detail of it, why it was classed.
Will it be on the portal?
Yeah, so you just, if you put the reference in, you'll be able to have a look at Debbie's
What a
report.
livestock pond.
It's not to stop them coming forward with a planning application. It's just saying it's not permitted development.
I appreciate that. I'm just interested.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Pond.
I'm not
It's like
sure.
animal welfare or whatever.
Maybe.
Right, so I declare the meeting closed.